Chapter 638. A few days ago, in the secret floor where the Dry Town Central Hospital morgue was located, the sound of metal carts' wheels came from the depths of the dark passage. It seemed that a new corpse was being transported. However, according to the hospital's regulations, it was not the time to transport corpses. A one-armed old man was in charge of guarding the morgue. His black eyes. Something was wriggling in his skinny body. It seemed that the old man's digestive system could move on its own. At the same time, there was an unusually sharp shovel leaning against the back of the chair. A strange voice came from the depths of the mouth, full of black teeth. Now is not the time to transport corpses. Please go back. If you violate the hospital's rules, you will be executed immediately. However, the thing in the passage ignored the old man's warning. The sound of the wheels did not change. Finally, a cart carrying a body bag slid out from the depths of the dark passage. However, no one pushed this cart. Logically speaking, only the staff in the hospital who were responsible for corpse transport knew where the morgue was. There was clearly something wrong with this driverless trolley. The old man directly picked up the shovel behind him and slashed it vertically. Together with the cart, the corpse was cut into two pieces. However, between the cut corpse bags, strange spiders made of fingers fell out. There were countless of them, far more than the capacity of the corpse bag itself. No matter how the old man used skills, or how he swung the shovel, or how he grew a large number of tentacles from his abdomen to assist in the attack, or how he sprayed a corrosive bile, he could not keep up with the number of these finger spiders. Soon, the old man was swallowed up. After feeling the pain of being swallowed, the scene changed. The old man woke up from a dream and continued to sit at the door of the morgue. It seemed that he was sleepy and had a nightmare when he was completely asleep. However, the sound of wheels came from the dark passage again. The same corpse cart appeared. The old man continued to destroy the cart and the corpse. This time, countless black hair grew from the corpse bag and instantly wrapped around the old man and cut him into pieces. A few minutes later, he woke up again. This process was repeated over and over again, but the old man still dutifully guarded the morgue. No matter how many times he died, even if fear made him tremble all over, he would still be the first to cut up the cart of corpses that was not delivered during the delivery time, until the number of deaths reached the 10th time. The ceiling above the old man's head overflowed with black liquid and landed on the old man's bald head. When the cart slid over, it wasn't attacked by the old man. Instead, she was stopped by his withered arm. The body bag slid open by itself. A fair-skinned, flawless female corpse suddenly sat up and tried to grab the old guard. At the same time, a large number of strange tentacles suddenly stretched out from the gap in the one-armed old man's arm. They were made up of flesh bubbles of various sizes and directly wrapped around the woman's arm. The old man's aura had completely changed. Creak, creak, creak. Tentacles grew out of his mouth. A voice that did not belong to him rang out. It was a deep, profound voice that was above humans. Jane, remember I told you before that if you want to come to my hospital, remember to tell me in advance. The dead woman seemed to be silent, but she was actually communicating with the man through another method. Interesting. However, the next time you come, remember to give me a heads up. Although the mayor allowed you to use the hospital's morgue. But no matter what, this is still my territory. Creak, creak, creak. Tentacles grew out from the old man's back and intertwined with each other to form a special fleshy key. It was inserted into the morgue's lock. The seemingly ordinary door actually needed to be turned several times. Click, click, click. There seemed to be multiple mechanisms set up inside the door, including some living creatures. It seemed like the morgue was a very important area, or else the mayor would not have let the dead woman assist in the management. After the key was removed, a layer of mucus was left on the keyhole. If one used the normal way to unlock the door, there would not be such mucus tissue. Since the matter had been clarified, the main body controlling the old man also left. The old guard could not bear the descent of such a noble consciousness. As the main body left, he also collapsed into minced meat. Soon, another elderly worker from the hospital came to take over the guard's job. At this time, the dead woman had already taken the cart and entered the morgue area. In her mouth, there was a key module in the form of mucus. It slowly formed a rusty iron key through the structure of the material in her body. On it was the word V.O. This key was the special reward that the dead woman gave to Han Dong a few days later. The timeline returned. When Han Dong got close to the central hospital, the fog did not affect him. The fog was unable to reach this area, and a hospital that Han Dong had not seen in the forms appeared before him. It was not a modern general hospital, but an old-fashioned hospital that was only 5 stories tall. It was more suitable for a rural town like Dry Town. At this time, Nicole's voice echoed in Han Dong's mind. "Lord Messenger, there seems to be a dependent like me here, and the presence is very strange. It seems to be mixed with something strange. If you were to fight him one-on-one, what are your chances of winning? I can't say for sure since I haven't seen the main body. Based on my current feeling, I can't beat him at all." At this time, a third person's voice appeared in his mind. It was Togu. When he saw the hospital, Togu's memory of Dry Town was awakened a little. "Master, I remembered something about the hospital." "Oh, tell me." "Director Richard Powell, an extreme existence in Dry Town. He is different from the people of Limbo Cult. He worships an even more extreme, twisted, and insane god. His divinity is also the highest in Dry Town. However, I can't remember what he looks like no matter how hard I try. It seems like before I lost my memory, I couldn't remember what he looked like. He already has half a foot in the void, and very few people know about his true form. Divinity, very important information. Director Richard Powell is a very terrifying existence. Even if my lord wants to use the power of all the anomalies and that ultimate demonic person, we might not have more than a 50% chance of winning if we attack this hospital head-on. However, there's no need for us to attack head-on, and there's no need for us to go all out from the beginning. First, we need to verify something. If the verification is successful, we will have another method to obtain the important brain material." Han Dong stepped into the hospital alone without summoning any anomalies. "You have entered Dry Town Central Hospital. Please be careful." Chapter 639. Warm-toned tungsten lamps. A black and white television from the 80s was hanging on the wall, playing Modern Times. An old half-circle wooden table was placed on the right side of the corridor as an information desk. On top of it was a landline that needed to be dialed, a few old newspapers, and an Americano with white smoke rising from it. The list of personnel on duty today was also posted on the inner wall. The ground was mainly made of terrazzo flooring commonly used in the 80s, made of gravel, glass, quartz, and other aggregates mixed with cement binder, which had a certain anti-slip property. Although it was very old and was obviously out of date, the hospital was unusually clean. A nurse on duty with curly hair and gold-rimmed glasses was sitting at the information desk, holding a cup of steaming hot coffee in her hand. Some patients were walking back and forth in the aisles. Some were on drips, some were in wheelchairs, and some were resting against the wall. The doctors and nurses were also walking together, discussing the next war inspection. Of course, this was from the perspective of an ordinary person. Han Dong switched his perspective between normal and magical eyes, and what he saw was completely different. 1. The walls were full of meat mouths of different sizes, and the patients could freely take water and nutritious food from them. 2. There were many small holes in the aisles where the meat was piled up. It was convenient for the patients to stand still and change directions when walking with tentacles. 3. The attending doctor was a cone-shaped, fleshy creature. The top of his head carried a highly activated brain tissue and more than 30 fingers through a dense neural network, giving off the feeling of a highly intelligent life. The nurses next to the attending doctor were a group of humanoid life forms without skin and mostly made of muscle tissue. They had obvious feminine features. They had no facial organs, and the entire face was branded with a deep cross. As for these patients, they were similar to the patients Han Dong had seen outside the hospital. Their bodies were composed of bubble-like flesh structures of different sizes. Whether it was the doctors, nurses, or patients here, their legs had obvious tentacles. They moved forward by wriggling their tentacles. The tentacles could be inserted into the small holes on the ground at any time for convenient movement. Due to witnessing the real situation in Dry Town Central Hospital, a mental test will be performed. The test results are as follows. Perseverance value is greater than the pollution value of the current scene. Full immunity, mental state is not affected. This situation was also within Han Dong's expectations. He had already come up with a plan to enter the hospital. After all, the main mission had never asked him to kill anyone in the hospital. He was only there to retrieve something. "Sir, how can I help you?" When the female nurse at the information desk saw Han Dong standing at the door for a long time, she put on a professional smile and asked with concern. From Han Dong's perspective, the nurse turned her face around, and a horrifying square mouth opened in the middle of her face where there was a cross-shaped dent. In the face of such a warm greeting, Han Dong also smiled in response. As if he was embarrassed to see such a beautiful nurse, Han Dong involuntarily scratched his neck. He accidentally scratched his skin, and a few straws fell to the ground. "Hello, Mr. Sam's farm manager, Nicholas. I came to the hospital to get something." That was right. Since Director Richard and Sam were both Tin Devils, Han Dong came to the hospital with Sam's name, which was similar to an emissary. Naturally, he had the authority to negotiate. At present, Han Dong directly used the excuse of getting something. Even if there was nothing to get, Han Dong could take the opportunity to write down the topic. "Please wait a moment. I need to verify." The nurse immediately grabbed the twisted worm phone on the fleshy table. The spinal nerves of the worm's tail extended infinitely and connected to the nervous system of the entire hospital. She was checking this matter through the hospital's intranet. The phone hung up. 2 months ago, Mr. Sam purchased a batch of injection equipment from us. No one has come to pick it up. Please come with me. The items are currently stored in the back warehouse. Okay. Han Dong was shocked. He didn't expect Sam to really buy things from the hospital. The follow-up conversation he had prepared was taken back. While following the nurse in the aisles of the hospital, Han Dong constantly switched between the naked eye and the magic eye, trying to find some hidden doors. During the walk, he also found a large number of monitors. Every 2 steps, Han Dong deliberately let the straw in his body fall to the ground, which constantly conveyed the identity of the scarecrow to the monitor. This door can't be seen with the naked eye. When he detoured to the back of the first floor of the hospital, Han Dong, who constantly switched his vision, finally found an iron door that could only be seen with the naked eye, and found that there were at least 3 monitors watching here at the same time. Han Dong was not in a hurry. He followed the nurse to the back warehouse. A large bag of fleshy glass syringes was handed to Han Dong. "If there is no problem, please sign here." When Han Dong took the paper, he deliberately reached out and touched the nurse's delicate little hand, which made the blonde nurse laugh. "Achoo!" When the nurse smiled, Han Dong suddenly sneezed. Several straws were choked out of Han Dong's mouth. In fact, the nurse didn't wear a mask. The droplets produced by the sneeze were immediately inhaled by the nurse, and some kind of virus had spread through the respiratory system. "I'm sorry, it's okay. I'll slowly carry the goods out myself. You go do your work." It seemed that because of the contact just now, or because the nurses in the hospital rarely had contact with other types of the opposite sex, the blonde nurse seemed to be interested in Han Dong. She quietly handed him a card with her private phone number. "I don't have to work tomorrow. Call me anytime." Han Dong nodded silently as he stared at the nurse, who had no skin and was completely red all over. The nurse walked in front. Han Dong was slightly slower because he was dragging the goods. When they came to the passage with the hidden door again, Han Dong and the nurse happened to be on both sides of the passage. Snap, a finger snapped. The G virus that invaded the nurse's body was quickly activated. As long as it was an organic organism made of cells, it would inevitably be affected. Snap! A large amount of proliferative tissue grew out of the nurse's body, and a giant eye appeared on her face. The G virus brought on a violent mood, which made the nurse directly attack the patients passing by. This action immediately attracted the attention of the 3-eye monitors in the passage, and the special operations team in the hospital quickly rushed to the area of the incident. It was also at this moment, a figure that no one paid attention to went around to the location of the hidden door. With an attitude of giving it a try, he inserted the key into the keyhole. Click, the door opened. In the blink of an eye, the scene of the corrupting hospital changed. In front of Han Dong was an unusually cold and clean passage. Chapter 640. This key. Is it the hospital's universal key? When Han Dong opened the door, he completely ignored the situation in the corridor and focused on unlocking the door. If he failed, Han Dong would quickly move away from the hidden door and pretend to be in a normal posture of shipping goods. Just as the key was inserted into the lock, the V.O.ID printed on the surface flashed slightly. A strange mucus film formed on the surface of the key and matched with the hidden door's lock, easily opening the hidden door. You have entered the joint management area, Dry Town Central Hospital, Morgue Corridor. I really found a right one. When he left the motel, Togu gave him the information that the nameless female corpse, Jane, as the prosecutor and forensic doctor of Dry Town, had a certain connection with the hospital's morgue. Thus, Han Dong concluded that the key was related to the morgue. It was an extremely unwise choice to confront a completely unknown hospital head-on and forcibly seize the brain. Currently, the only tool that Han Dong could use in the hospital was the key that he just obtained from the female corpse. According to some of the information that Han Dong had collected so far, the benefits of using this key outweighed the disadvantages. Han Dong had already made up his mind to start from there. The morgue is part of the Dry Town Central Hospital. Logically speaking, it's definitely enough to have a director of the 10 demons manage it. As for the forensic doctor in charge of the morgue, it's completely feasible to find a highly corrupted doctor. The saying that 2 tigers cannot live on the same mountain applies everywhere. In fact, the mayor ordered the nameless female corpse, Jane, who is also one of the 10 demons, to cooperate with the director to manage the morgue as a forensic doctor. This meant that the morgue was a very important area, where the corpses stored inside were also important to Dry Town. The mayor knew the director's nature very well. Considering that he might misuse the corpses, he assigned one of the 10 demons to manage the morgue. It not only ensured that the corpses would not be misused by the director, but also ensured the absolute safety of the morgue. Based on the above analysis, the morgue's danger index must be in the top 3 in Dry Town. Whether it's good or bad, I can only further verify it when I go deeper into the morgue. Han Dong's eyes were firm as he walked along the cold morgue corridor. He did not see any signs of corruption throughout the entire process. A short while later, the morgue, with its red light, appeared at the end of the road. An old man who was in charge of guarding the door sat by the door. From the perspective of the demon eye, the old man with empty eyes was connected to a heavy shovel through the tentacles on his back. He would deliver a fatal blow to any outsider who tried to break into the morgue. It was basically impossible to avoid interference in such a clean and impenetrable passageway. Even if he used all his means to kill the old man instantly, it would inevitably disturb the hospital manager. However, according to Han Dong's observation, the old man did not emit any aura. He was in a very strange state. Could it be? Han Dong tried to walk out of the shadow until he was less than 5 meters away from the old man. The old man actually didn't give any warning when the stranger approached. It was as if his consciousness had already been moved to another dimension. So, he's been affected by the female corpse's illusion. Han Dong smiled faintly. This situation indirectly proved that his plan was correct. Using the key would open another special hospital route. Perhaps he could obtain the perfect brain needed by the main plot through another route. When the key was inserted into the morgue's door lock, click, click, the iron door with multiple sealing mechanisms was being unlocked layer by layer. The key was still undergoing internal changes, adapting to the variable structure of the door lock, just before the door opened. Han Dong fully activated the smiley face characteristic of the talent tree. He crazily gnawed on a smiley face fruit and swallowed it. He stuck the excess red juice to the edge of his mouth, outlining a big dark red mouth. He knew in advance that he might be affected mentally. Han Dong fully activated the crazy laughter attribute. At the same time, he covered his whole body with the crow feather robe and used the part with the most feathers as a hood to cover his head. Tap! The raven staff was also in his hand. Every second, a sharp cry would come out from the raven staff, caw. It could also effectively prevent the influence of the illusion. If he was still dragged into the illusion with 3 layers of protection, Han Dong really had no other way. In a colder, darker, and cleaner passage, one morgue after another was neatly arranged on the right side of the road. Han Dong maintained his absolute focus and did not stop at any of the mortuary rooms in front of him. He went deeper into the mortuary until he reached the door number. Mortuary. Han Dong's staff stopped moving forward and he stopped in front of it. He inserted the key again. This master key, given by the female corpse, seemed to be able to open all the doors in the hospital. BZZT, the cold white light bulb hanging in the center of the morgue, slowly lit up. In the morgue about 30 square meters wide, there were body freezers on all 4 walls. A total of 48 freezers could be used to store corpses. Han Dong's gaze slowly swept through each freezer door. He paused in front of freezers 13, 17, and 26. But in the end, he chose freezer 41. He also needed to insert the key. BZT, cold air leaked out. When the freezer was pulled out, it was unusually easy. The corpses stored inside were quite light. There was not much hesitation. Han Dong reached out and grabbed the zipper of the body bag and pulled it down. A clean, beautiful, and flawless female corpse that Han Dong was familiar with appeared in front of him. It was one of the 10 demons in Dry Town, the nameless female corpse, Jane Doyle. Warning, warning, contact with resident, Jane Doyle. No matter how the system warned, the female corpse in front of him still showed no signs of movement. Her fingers did not even move. There was no movement, no sound, and no trace of killing intent leaked out. After the previous contact, Han Dong could roughly understand the female corpse's setting. She was immobile. If he wanted to communicate, he had to physical contact. Han Dong thought for a moment and reached out his left arm that belonged to the undead priest. He touched the female corpse's fingers. In an instant, an extremely cool, even refreshing voice echoed in Han Dong's mind. You are really special. You are the only life that is not affected by my spirit. Han Dong had already thought of how to continue the conversation in advance. He maintained a smile and asked, by the way, the master key that can be used in the hospital doesn't completely belong to you, right? You went through so much trouble to let me meet you here. Do you want to make a secret deal with me? The purpose of Han Dong emphasizing the word deal was to open up another route to obtain the perfect brain. Chapter 641. First, the motel was used as a high-difficulty illusion trial. The master key was given to Han Dong, who was the first to break the illusion. The key was used as a trigger. The second test was carried out. It was to test if Han Dong had the ability to sneak into the morgue and accurately find the nameless female corpse hidden in one of the morgue cabinets without disturbing the director. The female corpse clearly had a purpose for setting up all this. Do you want to make a secret deal with me? Han Dong asked. Due to the touch of their fingers, the elegant female corpse's voice echoed in Han Dong's mind. There is indeed something I need your help with. There's an encrypted document stored in my body. I need you to secretly put this document into Director Richard Powell's desk drawer. You must not be discovered. Of course, I will help in secret. Not to mention the female corpse's purpose for doing this. The level of danger of this mission was no less than fighting Director Richard Powell head-on. It was easy for Han Dong to sneak into the morgue. However, to sneak into the director's office without being discovered, the difficulty would increase by several levels. The director's office was also the most dangerous area in the hospital. Once he was discovered, Han Dong would be in a dead end. But there was an advantage. Han Dong would obtain Jane Doyle as help. I'm an outsider, and you and Director Richard are residents of Dry Town. Please give me a reason to believe you. Don't give me any hypothetical answers. I need something concrete to prove that you really want me to do this, and not use me as a sacrifice, bait, or some other evil purpose to send me to Director Richard's office. Put your hand into my mouth. You should be able to feel a thread. Han Dong did as he was told. He moved the female corpse's mouth and touched the thread at the end of his tongue. Pull out. There's a reason you want inside. Han Dong grabbed the thread stained with saliva and slowly pulled out a piece of white paper stored in the stomach pouch. After unfolding it, he found that the white paper was actually a temporary cooperation contract. It clearly stated that the residents of the village, Jane Doyle and Sim, were temporarily cooperating. During the period of the contract, they would not harm each other or their subordinates. At the same time, Han Dong's name was specifically mentioned in the contract. At the end of the contract, Sam's name was woven with straw. This special straw only existed on Sam's body, which was enough to verify the authenticity of the contract. Han Dong, who was laughing wildly, was certain that he was not affected by any illusions. At this moment, the female corpse continued. This is a temporary partnership I established with Sam using my prosecutor privilege. Why didn't I meet someone as interesting as you first? Based on her words, she seemed to have a good impression of Han Dong. For Han Dong, his attitude toward the dead woman was neutral. Even with the incident at the motel earlier, the dead woman had given Han Dong a unique key, allowing him to find another way to complete the main plot. Han Dong thought for a moment and nodded. If he rejected the cooperation here, the process of obtaining the brain would be interfered with by the dead woman. This would be fatal. Han Dong then gave his own opinion. All right, since this is a deal, I'll give it to you. If I'm not wrong, the letter you want me to put in the director's desk should be enough to shake the director's current position. Once it's discovered, I'll be subjected to the director's endless anger. I want an item and 2 important pieces of information. You go first. First, I need a perfect life quality brain stored in the central hospital. Okay. The personal file of Director Richard Powell. Okay. The personal file of Clown Pennywise. When Han Dong gave the third request, the dead woman immediately sank. A strange feeling spread in the morgue. The temperature suddenly increased by 30 degrees Celsius. A layer of frost even formed in the morgue. After a pause of half a minute, the dead woman spoke again. You actually know this guy. No wonder I could sense something similar to this bug's aura from you. Coincidentally, we met a few years ago. The clerk has banned all information about it. Currently, the entire dry town is forbidden to talk about it. I can't give you any information about it. Oh, so strict? The disaster Pennywise brought to the town has caused irreparable damage. Besides, the perfect brain in the central hospital and the information about the 10 devils are already very valuable. They're definitely worthy of this deal. Han Dong nodded. It was natural that there was something fishy about this. Otherwise, there would be no information about the clown until now. However, from the dead woman's answer, he could see a very important point. The clown was indeed not dead and should be somewhere in Dry Town. Okay, the deal was done. The documents you need to put on the director's desk and Director Richard's personal file are all stored in my body. You can take them yourself. As for the perfect brain, once I'm done, I'll give it to Sam directly. It must be something he needs. Remember, the documents you need to store are highly confidential. If you pry into it, you'll be violating our agreement. I'll immediately work with Director Richard to kill you. Okay, after receiving permission from the take it yourself, Han Dong did not hold back. He skillfully dissected the perfect dead woman. Although the dead woman was expressionless, she seemed to be enjoying the dissection process. After the dissection was completed, Han Dong heard a notification that allowed him to relax. Special side mission. The dead woman's request has been activated. The mission requirements and rewards were the same as the result of the discussion. Han Dong reached into the stomach full of witchcraft marks and burn marks. He found the document sealed with a special wax seal and Director Richard's personal file. In the blink of an eye, the wounds on the dead woman's body healed completely. She returned to her original perfect body. Accordingly, Illustrated Handbook, Resident Void, Director Richard Powell has been activated. As the temperature in the morgue was too low, Han Dong temporarily left and planned to check the information of the 10 demons, who were the closest to God, in the corridor. When Han Dong returned to the corridor of the morgue, he happened to look deeper into the morgue. Due to the full activation of Little Magic Eye and the mental enhancement given by Mad Laughter, Han Dong vaguely saw something floating in the depths of the morgue. What's that? Just when Han Dong wanted to investigate further, he heard the sound of rolling wheels. The dead woman, who was supposed to be in morgue number 13, was now carrying a cart out from the depths of the morgue. It stopped Han Dong from trying to go deeper into the morgue. Chapter 642. Under the orders of the mayor, the Dry Town Central Hospital morgue, which was under dual control, must have some unspeakable secrets. Due to the obstruction of the female corpse, Han Dong could not go in for the time being. He could only silently mark it in his heart and wait for the future to investigate. Through touch, he spoke to the female corpse again. "Can I borrow a morgue? I need some time to read Director Richard's information and make a relevant plan." Okay. When he opened the resident's household register again, a faint starry light overflowed from the inside. Collected resident information, void, Director Richard Powell, background wall, and character drawing. Half of it was a normal hospital ward, corresponding to a white-haired doctor with a kind face. The other half was a twisted hospital with piles of meat, corresponding to a grayish-black wrinkled skin bag, with a hollow vortex in the center of the chest and a priest's long skirt on the lower body, revealing only 2 feet. Type: hybrid demon kin. Basic information: male, height 175 centimeters, weight 45 kilograms, religion Church of the Void birthplace, alternate world of the Void, Marsh County Hospital, Canada, current residence, Lee Dairy Town, Central Hospital Dry Town, Constitution, monitoring report, frowny face, strength, E durability, B+, magic power, S-, agility, E, divinity, S+, introduction. Director Richard Powell was the closest to God among all the residents. Before he ascended, he was in alternate world of the Void, and was a doctor and a beginner theology researcher. Until one day, a squad of hybrid demon kin arrived in this world and came into contact with Richard. In the end, this squad was killed by Richard as an NPC. Through his dissection of the brain of his kin, his research, and eating, he officially obtained the real Void theology. In the original world, alternate world of the Void, Director Richard had completed the development of the church at the national level, allowing him to officially enter the Void door with the power of faith and have his first contact with God, transcending the level of the original world. He was valued by the mayor and received ascension after signing an agreement. Finally, he built a central hospital in Dry Town to provide special treatment services for the townspeople. Special ability: Void imprint. Esteem Richard could place a Void imprint, black triangular symbol, on any object within a range of 10 meters. The imprint could not be resisted, avoided, or removed. Different objects would have different effects when imprinted on them. Inorganic matter, sad face 1, doors, walls, etc., solid matter with a minimum side length of 50 centimeters, will evolve into a Void door, which can lead to a Void otherworld that is not suitable for the survival of living creatures. There's an exit. 2. Metallic substances will evolve into Void radiation, which will periodically radiate Void ions within a range of 3 meters to the outside. When the organic matter marked by the Void is exposed to radiation, it will accelerate its own degradation. Non-metallic substances, once marked, will be annihilated immediately. Organic matter, sad face 1. A human being or an animal whose structure, including brain, is not less than 90% similar to that of a human being. Once the mark of the Void was applied, it would undergo 3 stages of changes within a certain period of time: ether, starlight, karma. Upon reaching the starlight stage, the individual is regarded as dead. Upon reaching the cause and effect stage, the essence of life will change. 90% can only undergo changes at the ether level, losing the human form and turning into a low-level monster with stacked meat. 9% can reach this starlight level of changes, losing the human form, reconstructing consciousness, and turning into an intelligent life that is higher than human beings. They can use a few void secret methods. Only less than 1% of individuals can complete the final cause and effect change, completely breaking away from the category of carbon-based life, turning into a void life, and becoming an elite subordinate valued by Dean Richard. Note, the time of mutation is affected by the individual's attributes. Those with higher perseverance and physique values can extend the mutation time. 2. Non-human low-level animals. Without interval, the ether changes immediately, only the first stage, becoming a corrupted pet for Dean Richard to control, mostly used for reconnaissance and patrol. 3. Plants. Plants can absorb void energy through the imprint and quickly grow into polymorphic void plants. Part of them can derive simple self-consciousness through the construction of the cellular nervous system, often used to build fortifications, stable void door, and exoskeleton devices. 4. Life forms other than the above 3 types cannot bear the imprint, so it cannot be applied. Super body. Dean Richard has completely transcended the constraints of the ether body. He can lead the void to fill his body, change his physical form at will, and greatly increase the strength and dexterity values, or condense a void shell outside his body, greatly increasing the attack range. Proficient in void secret methods. Note, Dean Richard, who has a super body, does not have any surface weaknesses and cannot be killed by physical or magical means. Devout void believer, Dean Richard cares more about the issue of faith than anyone else in Dry Town. He shows absolute belonging to the God he believes in. It is also because of this piety that he received the God's gift of immortality. In Dean Richard's nest, which is the central hospital of Dry Town, there are a total of 9 void god worship statues, all of which are placed in extremely hidden and heavily guarded areas. As long as there is a void god statue, Dean Richard cannot be killed. Destroying any statue will also weaken Dean Richard's ability to a certain extent. When the 9 statues are completely destroyed, Dean Richard will no longer be protected by the god and will fall into a weak state and can be killed. Inherent equipment cannot be dropped, can only be held by the corresponding residents. Void God's sacrificial dagger grade. A type, human weapon distance. 1. Nearest attack distance. Dean Richard used the power of the void to cast a dagger. It is a necessary tool when sacrificing objects, so that the object that is cut will immediately establish a connection with the void. The human body that is branded with the void imprint, once hit by the dagger, will accelerate the mutation. It can also be stabbed into the body of any void servant, giving a comprehensive activation and strengthening. Lasts for 10 minutes. After the duration is over, the servant will be sacrificed. Void sphere grade, B+ type. Human weapon distance, 0 polish from the perfect spherical crystal in the void otherworld. When used, it will consume all the void energy stored in the sphere, ignoring the scene and terrain, forcibly bring all objects within a 100 m range to the void otherworld. After each use, it needs to wait for the sphere to be fully charged before it can be used again. Comprehensive resident ranking, number 5. Chapter 643. As expected, his ranking is higher than Sam's. His mark of the void is fatal to any participant in the Destiny realm, but still okay for me. Overall, his threat is not as great as Sam's, and I still have a 50% chance of completing the mission given by the female corpse. Just as Han Dong was combing through the information given to him by the Dean and formulating a plan, suddenly he felt a burning sensation on the back of his left hand. It was the first time. Han Dong was in the Destiny realm for the first time, and he felt the sensation from the yellow seal. Logically speaking, the mysterious yellow-robed man was a mantis demon in the real world, and the Destiny realm absolutely rejected mantis demons. Is this the strength of the old king? There must be something special for such an existence to travel across the realms to find him. Han Dong did not dare to be careless. When he understood the meaning of the yellow seal, he immediately tapped the ground with the raven staff. The black sand spread out and completely isolated the room. After all, he had signed a temporary contract with the female corpse, and the other party would not pry into Han Dong's secrets. Sizzle. Han Dong opened a freezer and found a corpse that was still intact, except for the neck that was completely cut open. He immediately placed the back of his hand on the corpse's forehead. The yellow seal also attached itself to the forehead. For a moment, thick white mist spread out in Moor number 1. With the movement of several white tentacles, the corpse's broken throat was immediately stitched up. Huff! Huh! As the corpse breathed, a large amount of white mist was sucked into its body. When the eyelids rolled up, a completely white pupil was revealed. The body was covered with a layer of faint yellow luster. The consciousness of the yellow-robed man had completely invaded the corpse. At the same time, Nicole Little Claw, who existed in a portable prison, curled up in a corner and wrapped her body with 8 octopus tentacles. Trembling as a dependent, she was born in the Destiny realm and did not know the yellow-robed man. However, Nicole could feel the huge difference between the realms, and her instincts made her fearful. To think that there's such a high-quality dependent hidden here who would come in contact with Yog. Kill him, and you and the dependent in your body will gain great benefits. This is difficult. Han Dong's face scrunched up, indicating that this was a difficult task. The strength of the residents in True Fate could be fully displayed through the information in the illustrated handbook. Even existences ranked outside of the top 10 possessed lethal characteristics. Take number 14 Michael Miles, for example. Instant kill with 3 strikes, moonlight teleportation, and unlimited devil resurrection under the moonlight. To kill the 10 demons, not only would Han Dong and his teammates have to use all their trump cards, but they would also need to take advantage of the situation. Any error in judgment or any unexpected situation could lead to serious injury or death for the team members. The corpse opened its mouth, and a white tongue swayed in the air. The ethereal voice echoed in the room. Yog's methods are not easy to deal with. However, this is only a void contactor. I will help in the dark, relying on my yellow seal, your berserk blood attribute, and your dependence. As long as the conditions were met, he would be able to kill him. Of course, if you choose to avoid the battle, I won't force you. Han Dong tried to ask, Sir, do you need to change the author again? Helping me like this in the Destiny realm must be very taxing on you, right? No. If there are any problems with the author, I will directly communicate with the Crow. I am helping you because of your excellent performance in the Scarlet Manor. Currently, you have a small title deed and a mobile title deed, making you a good envoy for me. Your growth is also very useful to me. Thank you. If the conditions are met, take the initiative to face this void contactor. With your abilities, you should be able to do it. As for the imprint, I will take care of it. At the same time, I will also give you some luck, making it easier for you to enter this hospital. Luck. When Han Dong asked the question, the white mist dispersed. The corpse immediately returned to the freezer, showing no signs of corruption. No one knew that the consciousness of an old king had just arrived. The so-called increase in luck did not make Han Dong feel any substantial changes. When the negotiation ended, Han Dong smiled bitterly. Every time at this juncture, he felt that the mysterious yellow-robed man would always jump out to increase the difficulty for Han Dong. It was the same last time in the Scarlet Manor. Han Dong and others planned to participate in the Red Banquet and then leave. Because of the identity of the feudal lord, the Scarlet Count would also not make things difficult for Han Dong. In the end, the yellow-robed man also suddenly jumped out of the dream and asked Han Dong to start a land deed war. Although the result was very good, and even allowed Han Dong to achieve the unprecedented mature hybrid demon, the process was extremely difficult. Any mistake in the process would lead to death. It was the same now. Originally, Han Dong only came to complete the main mission, so there was no need to fight with this terrifying director. The difficulty was increased by the yellow-robed man. I hope it's not a trap. If the yellow-robed man can really deal with the void imprint problem, there is indeed a chance to win. However, there is still a prerequisite. I need to find and destroy the 9 altars hidden in the central hospital and destroy the statue of the void god inside. I have no choice but to talk to the female corpse. When Han Dong pushed open the door of Morgue number 1, the cart carrying the female corpse happened to be in front of the door. It seemed that there was something important. However, the female corpse could not open her mouth to speak, and her limbs could not move. She could only express her urgency by constantly rubbing the cart back and forth. When he reached out and touched her finger, then the female corpse asked a series of questions. Did you just touch my body? You better explain the purpose and the process in detail. I only allow you to use the room. The body here is the public property of Dry Town. After a series of explanations, Han Dong finally solved the problem of moving the body. At the same time, he threw out the problem of Dean Richards' altars. What are you planning to do with the altars? When necessary, I can destroy the altars to weaken the Dean's ability. Only when there is a specific emergency will I take action to destroy the altars. Han Dong did not reveal his intention to kill the Dean. After all, even if Han Dong said it out loud, the female corpse would only think that he was an idiot. An outsider would never be able to defeat one of the 10 devils, and the female corpse would also deny Han Dong's dangerous idea. Okay, I will find the exact location of the 9 altars, but it will take some time. You can go now. If there is an emergency, you can also call your bodyguard. His personal strength is not weaker than some of the 10 devils. Okay, before saying goodbye, Han Dong pulled the thin thread in the female corpse's mouth again and pulled out the hospital map that was stained with gastric juice. Of course, Han Dong was also curious about the ranking of the female corpse. Chapter 644. The Central Hospital had a total of 5 floors. According to the hospital's map, Director Richard's office was located on the top floor. Han Dong continued to pretend to be a scarecrow. He carried a large bag of syringes and pretended to be lost. As soon as he left the corridor of the morgue, a short figure crashed into him. Crackle! Hundreds of syringes were scattered everywhere. Han Dong was also knocked to the ground. A few of the straws in his body were knocked out. I'm sorry. An elegant and soft apology entered Han Dong's ears. When he looked up, he saw a little lowly about 12 years old standing next to Han Dong. She was wearing black leather shoes, white stockings with strawberry patterns, and a light-colored dress. She had a pair of pure black eyes under her slightly curly black hair. Logically speaking, even if Han Dong's physical fitness was very poor, he would not be knocked down by such a little lowly. When he switched to the magic eyes vision, Han Dong was shocked. It was better to switch to the naked eyes view. Han Dong looked around at the same time. Because of the little lowly's arrival, the corridor was empty. Some patients who had difficulty moving had left immediately. Thinking back to the little lowly's true appearance, Han Dong could guess that this little lowly was not an ordinary person. Could it be that she has been imprinted with a void mark and completed 3 layers of transformation? Let's try to make contact first. I'll help you pick them up. The little lowly was very polite. However, Han Dong waved his hand, indicating that there was no need. Then, he imitated the scarecrow's ability. A large amount of straw grew from his body and wrapped around each of the syringes scattered on the ground. In a few seconds, the syringes were packed up again. Wow, what a strange ability. Big Brother Scarecrow, can you help me find Kuda? What? Kuda is my kitten. It suddenly disappeared today. If it runs out of the hospital, things will be very troublesome. Does it have any characteristics? As Han Dong asked, the little girl took out a short black hair from her pocket. This is Kuda's hair. The moment their palms touched, Han Dong immediately analyzed and located it. He seems to have run out of the hospital, but he shouldn't have gone far. Follow me. Big Brother, can you carry me? Once I leave the hospital, my body will become very weak. All right then. Faced with such a cute little lowly, most people would accept her without hesitation. However, Han Dong's complexion didn't look too good. When he carried her on his back, he felt as if he was carrying several 100 kilograms of weight. Moreover, he felt as if something was sliding by his ear. Could this be the result of luck increasing? The G-virus was concentrated between Han Dong's legs to activate the potential of his cells. Coupled with the raven feather's ability to reduce gravity, he carried the little lowly and rushed to the hospital's entrance. When they passed through the other corridors of the hospital, the patients and nurses on both sides of the corridor looked at them with fear. They were not afraid of Han Dong, but of the little lowly on his back. True enough, as soon as they left the hospital, the little lowly immediately rested her head on Han Dong's shoulder. She was in a daze and looked as if she was about to fall asleep. After following the scent for about 2 streets, the so-called kuda appeared on the side of the road. It was eating. Is this a kitten? What appeared in front of Han Dong was a 4-legged creature with fur all over its body. Its body was more than 3 meters tall, and its head was made up of more than 20 cat heads. It was currently eating a patient who was walking outside. Han Dong's little magic, I could clearly see the black, triangular mark between the kitten's fur. Hurry up, put this around Kuda's neck, or it will run away again. The little lowly took out a leather rope from somewhere. There were some hybrid demon words imprinted on the inside that Han Dong could read. Okay, Han Dong gently placed the weak little lowly on the side of the road. He continued to imitate the scarecrow and disguise the yellow sand as the roots of the scarecrow to bind the kitten that was eating. The G-virus was fully activated, and the meridians under the skin squirmed. The moment the kitten was trapped, Han Dong directly rode on its body and used the rope to tie the multi-headed cat's head. The rope immediately showed its binding effect, and the originally huge mutated monster turned into a British short-hair cat in a short time. Clap, clap, clap. There was a burst of applause and exclamation behind him. Wow, Brother Scarecrow, you're amazing. Normally, people in the hospital can't catch kuda. Detected a change in intimacy level. Your intimacy level with important person, Shirley Powell, has increased. Cold neutral. Powell and the director have the same surname. Is this the so-called luck value of the yellow-robed man? Just as Han Dong carried the little lowly back to the hospital, the entire building was shrouded in a layer of shadow. Wisps of powerful aura flowed out from the main entrance of the hospital like a liquid. When Han Dong returned to the street where the hospital was located, he could clearly see a layer of light purple liquid spreading over his feet. A dense aura that originated from the void made ordinary people not dare to approach. At the main entrance of the hospital, standing in the illustrated handbook, was Director Richard. Looking directly at his true appearance was 100 times more shocking than the picture in the illustrated handbook. The gray-black body with wrinkled skin and an irregular circular pit similar to the surface of the moon in the center of his chest. The priest's robe was tied around his waist, covering his legs, only revealing his 2 feet. Because of the appearance of Director Richard, the ground turned into a void domain full of gravel and pits. There was a faint halo similar to a lunar eclipse on the director's head, and there was also a shadow of a black pyramid behind him, the resident closest to God. The pressure he brought to Han Dong made Han Dong want to give up the original plan for a moment. Surely, I've warned you countless times. Before your body is completely formed, you're not allowed to leave the hospital. This warning was like the bell of the end of the world, constantly ringing in Han Dong's mind. Straws immediately flowed out of his nose, and he knelt on one knee due to discomfort. Dad, it's because Kuda ran out of the hospital. Kuda is currently the focus of your research. I just wanted to get it back. I just happened to run into Brother Scarecrow on the way. He's very powerful and helped me find and catch Kuda. Hearing Shirley's explanation, the director's anger subsided slightly, and he stared at Han Dong with his deep dark eyes. He felt like he could see through his disguise, and Han Dong's head was full of straws. Oh, Sam's subordinate? The director's gaze did not linger for too long, and he looked at his daughter again. There won't be a next time, or I'll ground you for 15 days. The void orb in Director Richard's hand flickered slightly. Asterisk buzz. Asterisk the void door opened out of thin air, and Director Richard turned around and stepped into it. Dad seems to be busy with the moth experiment recently. Brother Scarecrow, You're not in a hurry to go back, right? How about playing with me? Sure. How could he cruelly refuse such a cute little Loli's request? Chapter 645. Dean Richard was currently conducting some sort of experiment in the void of space. This was good news for Han Dong. Because of Shirley, Han Dong took the elevator directly to the fourth floor, which was only one floor away from the director's office. Han Dong also found some problems. Each floor of the hospital had a clear division of levels. The first floor was the lowest level, while the fifth floor was the highest level. To go up one floor, one had to insert a finger into the authentication hole in the elevator. In fact, a tentacle was inserted to verify the level. Due to Shirley's special identity, she could go to different floors at will. The layout of the fourth floor was completely different from the first floor, where patients could be seen everywhere. The material used to construct this floor was starry bubble sarcomas, which were formed by extruding and stacking. There were a total of 13 rooms in a wide circular hall. On each corresponding door, there was a strange mark, which symbolized the special patients imprisoned inside. One of the rooms with a cat head mark obviously corresponded to the kitten, Mr. Kuda. "Brother, come with me. We have to lock Kuda up. If he runs around again, I will be grounded by father." They pushed open the corresponding room. The room was filled with pet cages, more than 100 of them. Meow meow, hundreds of cats were raised here and lived with Kuda. Mr. Kuda needs to continue absorbing 87 cats to evolve to its final form. Father has always been weak when it comes to animal modification. If Mr. Kuda's experiment succeeds, Father will create more Void Realm. It will not be limited to humans. Sooner or later, he will be able to sit on the mayor's seat. The little Loli said as she stroked Mr. Kuda in her arms. The scene that seemed very comforting to ordinary people was quite twisted in Han Dong's eyes. The little Loli's gentle stroking was actually a warning to the kitten. The tentacles full of starry spots wrapped around Mr. Kuda's body. Finally, the kitten, who was almost suffocating, was tied up with an iron chain. Han Dong took the opportunity to ask, "By the way, are the special patients who are important to Director Richard locked up on the fourth floor of the hospital?" "Yes." Father said that he can only modify the moths in the cocoons. He is still far from the perfect cocoon growth. Otherwise, Father would have built a real void army and occupied Dry Town. I don't think it's appropriate for me to say that. You're Sir Sam's subordinate. I heard that Sir Sam can extract souls with a wave of his hand. Is that true? Yes. Wow. When my body is healed, I will go to Sir Sam's farm to play. I heard that he's the friendliest of the 10 devils, so he will definitely be willing to play with me. All right. What kind of strong magic do you know? Can you show me? Yes. Han Dong agreed to the little girl's request as much as possible. Just as Han Dong was using yellow sand to disguise it as straw and performing various tricks, he accidentally caught a glimpse of a ghostly fire in the depths of the cat breeding room. As time passed, the nether flames grew brighter and brighter. "Surely, what's that?" As Han Dong put away the straw, he pointed to the will-o'-the-wisp deep in the pet room. The little Loli immediately revealed a surprised expression. She anxiously wanted to cover Han Dong's eyes, not wanting him to see the will-o'-the-wisp, but it was already too late. "Oh no, I forgot that there's a shrine hidden in Mr. Coulthard's breeding room. The location of the shrine cannot be known by outsiders. If Father finds out about this, Brother Scarecrow, you will be killed. What should I do? What should I do? This is luck value." Han Dong was a little confused. At first, he did not pay much attention to the increase in luck value mentioned by the yellow-robed man. As a result, he bumped into the dean's daughter and successfully established a friendly relationship with her. Then, he happened to encounter a shrine. His luck was too good. "I promise I won't tell anyone, including Sir Sam." "Really? That's great." The little Loli immediately believed Han Dong's verbal promise. The shrine will only light up when it thirsts for offerings. Father is not in the hospital right now, so I have to help him fill up the offerings. "Brother Scarecrow, wait for me here." The careless Loli had actually left Han Dong behind while she went off to look for the sacrificial offerings. "My God, this is just a neutral relationship, and she trusts me so much? If she reaches a reverence relationship, won't she be willing to do whatever I ask her to do? Han Dong shrugged and immediately went to the depths of the pet room. The shrine that was completely different from what he imagined was placed in the deepest part of the room. It was a small pavilion made of black stone that overflowed with starlight. A large number of ghost faces were printed on the surface, symbolizing the offerings that were sacrificed in the past. Inside the small pavilion, there was a rather strange statue of a god. An object made of small bubbles floated in the air. Sometimes it was spherical, sometimes it branched out, and sometimes all the small bubbles gathered into a big bubble. It was obviously moving, but there was no sense of vitality. It was very different from the indescribable statue of the old king that Han Dong imagined. Chun-Li, as Han Dong called out, a female ghost in red immediately appeared in the shadow behind him. Can you destroy it? Chun-Li stared at the strange bubble that was constantly changing and shook her head slightly. Probably not. Then we can only do this. Bear with it. Han Dong reached out and pressed his hand against Chun-Li's back. A speckled tentacle reached into Chun-Li's body and touched her dantian. It injected new power into Chun-Li, but it could only be maintained for a short period of time and not for long. For a moment, tentacles drilled out of Chun-Li's palm and wrapped around the kitchen knife. Her overall aura also changed slightly. This will definitely work. Later, when the female corpse gives us the location of all the shrines, I need you to destroy all of them within a specified time. Okay. When the little lowly brought back 2 ordinary patients for the sacrifice, Han Dong pretended that he had done nothing and waited at the door. As the sacrificial ceremony ended, the bubble no longer lit up with the light of the will-o'-the-wisps. Han Dong asked tentatively again, "Surely, what is the void alternate world like? I heard that in the void alternate world, Director Richard is almost invincible. Is it true?" "Yes. High-grade believers who believe in the void god will be granted a starry sky by the true god, which is the void alternate world. Father's void alternate world has been expanded to 100 times its original size. It's amazing. It's so big. Yes. Do you want to take a look? Father is doing experiments in the pyramid, and we can take a look from the outside. Hee, Brother Scarecrow, you'll definitely be scared. This, will I accidentally die?" Han Dong pretended to be very scared. "No, I won't let Brother Scarecrow die." Then, okay. He was secretly delighted. If he really had to fight Director Richard, Han Dong would very likely be brought into the void alternate world because of the void orb. It was very important to obtain inside information in advance. If it was too difficult, Han Dong would give up on killing the director. After all, his life was more important. Chapter 646. In the hospital, any door or wall, as long as it was marked with a void imprint, it would be the entrance to the void otherworld. Regarding this, Dean Richard maintained a welcoming attitude, and any life form could freely enter. Of course, the location of each entrance was different. Han Dong was led by Shirley to the first floor of the hospital at the end of a corridor. On the opposite wall, there was a black triangular imprint. Han Dong's little magic I couldn't spy on this wall. He could only see a trace of void oil seeping out from the cracks of the wall. The void otherworld is the area that Father values the most. There are also some real void life forms that have gone through 3 stages of metamorphosis. They are all very powerful. Brother Scarecrow, you must stay by my side. You mustn't run around. Shirley held Han Dong with one hand and touched the imprint on the wall with the other. In the blink of an eye, the two were standing on a dark area similar to the surface of the moon, with many irregular pits. The sky above was covered by a kind of polygonal roll of clouds. About 100 meters away, there was a black pyramid shrouded in clouds. Perhaps it was because of the influence of the pharaoh attribute. When looking at the pyramid, Han Dong actually felt a little intimate. At this moment, he also understood what the benefits that the yellow-robed man mentioned were. "Hey, Brother Scarecrow, you are actually not affected?" Ordinary people who come here can't even do the most basic breathing. Yes, yes, my scarecrow can store oxygen. Even in an oxygen-free environment, I can continue to move for a long time. Wow, that's amazing. Han Dong was naturally fooling the other party. He was indeed not affected by the void otherworld. Even if this was Dean Richards' backyard, Han Dong could feel that the oxygen molecules here were wrapped by the strange void energy in the air. Only a life form that was branded with the void imprint could breathe freely. Han Dong could breathe normally through the unique, faceless head. He was not restricted by the void. Seeing such a void otherworld and confirming that he was not restricted by the void, Han Dong was in an active state of mind. The yellow-robed man didn't trick me this time. The thing that Dean Richard has is very important to me. If I can kill this person and take everything he has, it will be a great upgrade for me. It can even let me prepare for the great expedition in advance. Only powerful life forms in real fate will drop cell essence, high quality. I can use it to complete the upgrade of the faceless head. Phew, it's worth it. Count, can you do it? Han Dong established a connection with the Count's consciousness in his brain, intending to officially confirm the highly dangerous plan of murder. However, the fearless and slightly arrogant Count did not immediately express his stance. Instead, he talked about some things that he knew. After all, the Count was a mature mantis demon who had been roaming around outside the city. He had connections with many different forces and knew a little more than the others. Nicholas, these existences are older than time. They can't be measured with a line. The old kings also have different levels. Whether it's the owner of Stewart Manor, or the one I serve, CHF. Even if one of them can make the world feel the erosion of the plague and give birth to thousands of high-level ghouls, one can produce blood wine, turning any life form into a blood descendant, and their physical fitness is higher than that of the same level. But the two of them are ranked among the old kings. At most, they can only be ranked near the middle or even slightly lower. This is why I secretly contact other forces in private. Blood wine is powerful, but there is also a limit. Just through blood wine, I, Bach, can't touch the level of the king. The individual you are about to face is a high-level descendant who has touched YG. The king he touched is older than time, more complicated than space, and is in existence in a high position. The power of the void is more difficult to deal with than you think. Although this was the first time Han Dong heard that there was a difference between the old kings, he was surprised, but his determination did not waver. After all, Han Dong was not facing the old king, but just a contact. Oh, Count, you have times when you are afraid? Ha ha ha. I'm just reminding you out of kindness. If we're defeated by this guy, our consciousness will not completely die, but will continue in another way. What awaits us will be endless pain and struggle. Of course, if you really want to do it, I will accompany you. After all, in terms of craziness, this matter is not as crazy as you directly starting a land deed war with me. That's good, but my plan is not complete yet, and it's not the time to start a war. The current difficulty is how to let the moonlight shine in. Just as Han Dong cut off the conversation with Count's consciousness, a strong aura suddenly appeared. A powerful aura suddenly approached, and little Lowly immediately stood in front of Han Dong to block it. It was not Dean Richard, but a void being that had completed all the stages: ether, starlight, cause, and effect. Through a special bandage wrapped around his body, he maintained his human form. The head that was exposed was similar to the Milky Way, and the illusory tentacles shining with starlight moved around his face like liquid, flowing into the huge light spot in the center. At the same time, thousands of illusory tentacles grew out of his back, weaving a brilliant starry sky. The tip of his feet was about 10 centimeters off the ground, and he slowly floated over. Gilles, this is my friend. Don't hurt him. I just brought him here to take a look, and will leave immediately, little Lowly warned sternly. The void being called Gilles did not seem to listen to Shirley's words at all. The illusory tentacles moving around his face immediately combined, turning into an ugly and striped human face. Lord Richard has ordered that non-voidals are not allowed to set foot here. For such a lowly scarecrow to set foot in this sacred place is disrespect and blasphemy to Lord Richard. This place does not tolerate the existence of trash. He ignored little Lowly's obstruction. Gilles extended a finger, and a beam of light shot out, directly penetrating Han Dong's chest. A large amount of straw flew in the air. When Han Dong fell backwards, his eyes were fixed on the void being called Gilles, as if announcing his death. However, Gilles had seen this gaze too many times and did not take it seriously at all. Thud! An energy that could directly erode life spread out in Han Dong's body. His consciousness also dissipated, cut off by himself. Chapter 647. After an unknown amount of time, Han Dong slowly regained consciousness, and the first thing he heard was the beeping sound from the ECG monitor. When he slowly opened his eyes, he found a doctor with a cone-shaped body, brain, and fingers connected by tentacles. He was performing a cardiovascular suture and heart repair surgery on him. He was lying on a fleshy operating table with a blood supply function, surrounded by nurses with cross-shaped pits on their faces. When they saw Han Dong wake up, everyone was full of joy. The purpose of deliberately cutting off his consciousness was to not be suspected by anyone. Even Director Richard would think that he was just an insignificant scarecrow, nothing to worry about. And Han Dong knew very well that Shirley, who had established a good relationship with him, would definitely send him back to the hospital. After the operation, when Han Dong was pushed out of the operating room, the little girl had tears in her eyes. The intimacy level with Shirley Powell has changed. Neutral friendly. That works? Brother Scarecrow, I'm glad you're okay. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have taken you to the Void Realm. When you recover, you should go back. When my body is completely recovered, I will come back to the farm to play with Brother Scarecrow. Han Dong pretended to be seriously injured and nodded reluctantly. Although the void light was very fatal, and the moment it shot into the body, it destroyed Han Dong's body. But the light was only aimed at the heart, not the head. As long as the void energy was offset, Han Dong would be out of danger. Han Dong was immediately pushed into a separate ward. A tube was inserted into the back of his hand to continue to inject nutrient fluid to accelerate the recovery of the body. Shirley didn't disturb Han Dong's rest and left first. It was already night outside the window, but the clouds were slightly dense tonight, and the moon had yet to appear. I have to say, the medical conditions here are quite good. It directly restored my body to its peak state. Just when Han Dong pulled out the infusion tube by himself, a card appeared in the originally sealed ward. Female corpse Jane had arrived. Crunch, crunch, she was still rubbing back and forth through the wheels of the cart to express her eagerness and let Han Dong quickly touch her to establish a communication channel. There's good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first? Good news. All the altars in the hospital have been confirmed. And the bad news? Director Richard has changed his habits. He moved one of the altars from the hospital to the Void Realm. I can't locate it. Han Dong's expression didn't change. An altar isn't bad news. I had my suspicions at first. After all, the altar is Director Richard's weakness. Although it is convenient to offer sacrifices at any time in the hospital, it is also more dangerous. Have you found a way to sneak into the dean's office? We'll move out in half an hour. Once you can put the document on Richard's desk, I'll take you directly out of the hospital. Currently, Richard is conducting experiments in the Void Realm. This is a great opportunity. All right, the communication ended. Han Dong used the same method to grab a thin thread inside the female body's mouth. The other end of the line was naturally connected to the map that marked the location of the shrine. Be careful. When the female body parted with Han Dong, she actually added a word of concern. Then, the cart slowly slid into the shadows of the corner with the female body and disappeared with the body. Staring at the disappearing female body, Han Dong was completely lost in thought, completely free to move around in the territory of the other 10 demons. The corresponding level of the female body may be higher than I thought. Fortunately, I'm not a calculative person. The second time we met, I got along with the female body normally and established a beneficial relationship. Hopefully, we can get along peacefully like Sam in the future. Han Dong stood up and stood by the window. He stared at the uneven density of the clouds. He estimated that in another half an hour, the dense clouds would pass by and the moonlight would shine in normally. Chun-Li, Toga Nicole, it's time to start warming up. Han Dong stared at the slowly moving clouds outside the window and reorganized the framework of the plan in his mind. A great battle was brewing in the silent night. For Director Richard, the main purpose of the hospital is to obtain patients, worship the shrine, and conduct basic research. Richard's real research area should be the Black Pyramid in the Void Realm. It's here. The moonlight scattered. Even though the virus wreaked havoc and most people shut themselves in, even though it was a spring festival holiday, and even though his boss did not give him any conditions for a raise, that man still came to work on time. At the front door of Dry Town Central Hospital, wearing a leather headgear, Miles stepped out of his leather shoes and stood at the door in a standard standing position, announcing the death of all life in the hospital. As for Han Dong, he was waving at the bodyguard beside the bed in a single ward on the 3rd floor of the hospital. Boom! He lifted his leg and kicked the steel door of the hospital. The door was instantly uprooted and sent flying. It flew quickly through the straight corridor. The patients along the way were all hit by the door and were instantly crushed. The nurse sitting in the reception area at the door had a fierce look on her face, but before she could wave the scalpel in her hand, she was directly beheaded. Evil Aura Domain was fully activated. The liquid evil aura that was like a fleshy quagmire invaded Dry Town Central Hospital. Anyone who blocked the way would be beheaded by Miles and immediately become a part of the evil aura. At the same time, deep inside the Black Pyramid in the Void Realm, Director Richard, who was conducting some kind of experiment, discovered the situation through the surveillance cameras arranged in the hospital. Michael Miles, can't the desire to kill be suppressed? How dare you come to my place to make trouble? Sir, do you need us to stop it? Several void creatures wearing white priest robes with triangular marks on their faces were assisting in the research on both sides. They actually took the initiative to apply to fight against Miles. No need. He just needs to satisfy his desire to kill. It's okay to give him some defective products from the hospital. The current research is very important. Don't be distracted. Yes. His vision turned to Han Dong on the 3rd floor of the hospital. With Miles' invasion, Han Dong did not move for the time being. Waiting, Han Dong wanted to see if Director Richard would return to the hospital. However, after waiting for 5 minutes, there was still no response. Knock, knock, knock. There was a knock on the door of the ward. It was the director's daughter who came to the door. Brother Scarecrow, there's a crazy resident here. Father has an important experiment project at hand and doesn't seem to take it seriously. That crazy resident has found a way to go upstairs. We have to find a safe place to hide. Otherwise, we'll be killed. Shirley, who had a friendly relationship with Han Dong, was quite concerned about his safety. Okay, where's the safest place? Han Dong asked. Father's office. It's impossible for anyone to invade Father's office. Moreover, once the other party finds the 5th floor, Father will definitely deal with it personally. However, there are a lot of confidential information hidden in Father's office. Brother Scarecrow, I have to seal your senses before I can bring you there. Don't worry, once the danger is over, I'll remove it. Okay. Han Dong nodded. A starlight tentacle grew from the little lowly's body and covered Han Dong's eyes. It then drilled into his ears and mouth, and then bound Han Dong's whole body. This time, the little lowly carried Han Dong on her back. They quickly took the elevator to the 5th floor. Chapter 648. Just like that, Han Dong was brought directly to the dean's office by Shirley while being restrained. The security of the office was so tight that it required multiple checks. Even the female corpse could not easily enter the office. Yet, Han Dong was able to enter it so easily, even though his eyes were entangled by the little girl's tentacles. But the little magic eye was in an open state, and the outside world could be seen at a glance. The dean's office was made of a kind of, or from the void otherworld. It was similar to a stargazing room, but not to the extent of changing it like a stargazing room. In the starry room, there were a large number of filing cabinets. Countless research materials were stored here. Obviously, it had transcended the original world of the void otherworld and ascended to Dry Town. Dean Richard was far from satisfied. Its yearning for the void and its thirst for theological knowledge was endless. To some extent, it was somewhat similar to Han Dong. On the desk, made of black void crystal, there was a photo frame. Inside was a black and white photo of a father and daughter. It was a completely normal photo of a kind-looking old doctor and a rather cute little girl. Shirley would be moved every time she saw this photo. Han Dong stared at this photo and thought for a while. It was the same at the moment. She said with a slight sob, "Dad chose to explore theology and go deep into the void for me. It's okay now. My life now is pretty good. As long as I can complete it, I can also go to the outside world." Brother Scarecrow, I know you're feeling very uncomfortable, but Father's office is absolutely off limits to outsiders. Please bear with it. At this moment, Han Dong, who was restrained, gently moved his arms. The faceless skull was activated. A speckled tentacle that was far superior to Shirley's level overflowed from Han Dong's body and broke free in an instant. Brother Scarecrow, without giving Shirley too much time to react, the magic I looked directly at her. At the same time, a tentacle penetrated the little girl's forehead. The double suppression directly put the little girl into a long-term coma. At least if no one disturbed her, she would not wake up for 48 hours. The first thing Han Dong did was to walk to the desk and put the confidential document given by the female corpse into one of the drawers, completing the task with ease. Han Dong decisively carried the unconscious little lowly on his back and left the office. The wheels rolled. The female corpse on the tablet was already waiting at the door. "After I send this girl back to her ward, we'll leave." "Wait, which floor is Miles on?" "The second floor." "All right, I should be able to get away on my own. Jane, you go first. Miles doesn't seem to like you." "Okay, I'll give the perfect brain directly to Sam. Be careful." The female corpse's voice reverberated in Han Dong's mind. At this moment, it sounded gentle. In the blink of an eye, it fell into the shadow and disappeared. Han Dong then took the elevator down and put Shirley back to the private ward he had been staying in. Han Dong could tell that Dean Richard had paid extra attention to his daughter. Even when the little lowly was reincarnated, he still retained a part of his humanity. Han Dong's definition of human was not the appearance, but the heart. He would not kill Shirley. Then, Han Dong came to the stairwell on the third floor. This place was guarded by the hospital's high-level mutants. As the guillotine appeared, these mutants could not resist at all. They turned into liquid, murderous aura and became part of Miles. When Miles walked out from the corner, he looked at Han Dong, who was standing on top of the stairs, as if to say, "Good morning, boss." In fact, the two of them would not be so harmonious. He directly slashed at Han Dong with his sword. See through. While dodging perfectly, Han Dong put one hand on Miles' shoulder and put his mouth next to his ear. A tentacle-like tongue came out of Han Dong's mouth. It penetrated Miles' headgear and entered his eardrum. The demon's whisper was conveying some kind of message. When the whisper ended, Miles decisively stopped attacking and whispered, "I'll go with you," demon's language. Han Dong smiled and patted Miles' shoulder to show his appreciation for his employee. No more going up. Han Dong chose to return to the end of the passage on the first floor. He entered the void otherworld from the furthest entrance. He first showed the number 2 and signaled Miles to follow him in 2 minutes. Then, Han Dong reached out and touched the wall with the void imprint. He came to the edge of the void otherworld through the same entrance. It was a relatively safe area. The void life form in charge of patrolling this area, Gules, floated again. The bandage wrapped around his body swayed in the air. He quickly found Han Dong, the second invader. Waves of void echoes came from this person's mouth. "It's you again." The void light obviously pierced through your heart. "Why didn't you die? Could it be that Shirley used the hospital's first aid methods to heal you?" You came here to die again. How stupid. The same method. Gilles condensed a strong void energy at the tip of his finger. The spiral light shot straight at Han Dong. This time, Gilles aimed at Han Dong's head. However, a drop of seawater overflowed from Han Dong's palm. Deep sea secret technique, waves. The seawater turned into a wave and formed a defensive shield. When the light hit the surface of the wave, it only caused a small splash. How could an attack unleashed by a postnatal void being penetrate the ability of a relative with royal bloodline? The third anomaly was Nicole Littleclaw. Han Dong's role was to support her. What? Seeing that his killer move was blocked, the galaxy pattern floating on Gilles' back trembled slightly and gathered in front of him. His 10 fingers linked together, trying to launch multiple attacks. At this moment, a voice sounded in Gilles' mind. It was the voice of his master. Run! Gilles was absolutely obedient to his master. However, he did not believe that such a weak scarecrow could block his attack. Hence, he was a little greedy. After releasing 10 consecutive light rays, he chose to run. However, the light rays still hit the surface of the sea and could not penetrate it. Just as Gilles turned around, he bumped into something hard. It felt harder than steel, but more viscous than a quagmire. 2 minutes were up. The bodyguard, Miles, arrived. Resident. Moonlight, Michael Miles. Why did you appear here? Just as Gilles tried to weave the galaxy tentacles into wings and use the environment to escape, 3 slashes had already cut through his body. When he looked up, he saw an unstoppable guillotine falling down. Even with the body of the void, he could not avoid being executed. For a moment, dense void fluid overflowed from the Black Pyramid. Dean Richard Powell forcibly stopped his important experiment and personally appeared. Chapter 649. The wheels moved. The clean flatbed cart carried the female corpse and slid through the aisles of the hospital. Sometimes it was fast, sometimes it was slow, and it was slightly impatient. As the female corpse passed by, the stained aisles were automatically cleaned. The cart returned to the morgue. He went to the female corpse's office and took out a report about Han Dong. Due to the fact that he couldn't speak, move, or sense anything, the female corpse had a special characteristic. The female corpse could only read it by controlling other intact corpses. Click! The morgue was opened, and a perfectly stitched corpse appeared. It was stitched, but there was no trace of stitching. Why was it perfect? It was because this corpse was pieced together by the female corpse using the best parts in the morgue. Even each finger was taken from a different individual and assembled into the perfect body for the royal family. Witchcraft was activated. The corpse immediately sat up. The first thing she did was to express her confusion. This kid could have chosen to leave and go to Sam's farm to get the resident's permit reward. Why did he choose to infiltrate the void realm and challenge the old guy who was closest to God? Even the mayor didn't dare to set foot in the void realm of a lunatic like Richard. From the deciphering of the illusion in the motel, he is not a reckless person, but a careful guy. Why did he make such a decision? Just as the female corpse was puzzled, a strange voice came from the corridor of the morgue. Because he is very interesting, the female corpse immediately heard the strange voice from the depths of the morgue. She immediately controlled the perfect body double to open the door. She saw a red balloon floating at the door with a smiling face drawn on it. At this moment, the witchcraft incantations drawn on the female corpse were all activated. Streams of visible, colorful ripples flowed out of her body. They were more than 10 times stronger than those in the motel. Where the colorful ripples spread, the corridor of the morgue was covered with colorful spots. Or it formed a small stream on the ground. Or there were some sick deer jumping around in the corridor. Such physical illusions spread all the way to the end of the corridor. Several eyes appeared among the flowers, and she found that the door in the deepest part of the morgue was opened. After learning about the situation, the female corpse immediately dialed a private number that belonged to a certain existence in the town hall. Before the call went through, The red balloon immediately flew back and formed a face on its surface. It begged, Don't let the clerk come over. I just came out to get some fresh air. I have no intention of running away. Haha, I'm going back now. I'll go back immediately. I beg you to let me off." The balloon floated back to the deepest room and closed the iron door with a rope. Even so, Jane Doyle was still worried. He then applied multiple layers of magical seals to the door. At the same time, he sent a paper report to the town hall through the prosecutor's internal mailbox. However, just as she was about to hand over the letter, she suddenly thought of an important problem. Nicholas was fighting against Director Richard in the hospital. If the people from the town hall came over at this time, especially if the secretary who liked to meddle in other people's business came in person, no matter how capable Nicholas was, he would still die without a doubt. With that in mind, the female corpse did not send the letter. He was going to wait until the incident in the hospital was completely over before reporting the relevant information to the higher-ups. After a series of interactions, the female corpse had a good impression of this person. Nicholas's appearance and his way of doing things were completely different from the outsiders who came to Dry Town in the past. The others came here with the intention of killing. It was impossible for them to negotiate with the female corpse, let alone cooperate with her. However, this young man was slightly different. The female corpse did not feel any hostility from him during the interaction. Even though she might have tried to kill him in the motel, Nicholas still did not take it to heart. The female corpse had a lot of conflicts with Director Richard because they jointly managed the public morgue in the hospital. If Richard really died, it would be a good thing for her. However, the female corpse still did not understand why Nicholas dared to challenge Director Richard. At this moment, the female corpse remembered that Han Dong seemed to have touched a corpse in Morgue Number 1. She immediately asked her substitute to examine the corpse. As expected, a special note was found in the corpse. On it was a special message from Han Dong. The content of the note made the female corpse smile. "If you can really defeat Richard, I can give you some special treatment. Void Realm." Director Richard was angered by the execution of a void being. However, Director Richard did not directly descend in front of Han Dong. Instead, he appeared at the top of the Black Pyramid, looking down at the group of invaders who were not affected by the void. His voice echoed in the void and reached the brain of Han Dong and the others. "I admit that individuals who can walk freely in the void are welcome. However, killing my subordinates is a blasphemy to the void. Feel the void." Director Richard opened his arms wide as if he was embracing the void, with the Black Pyramid as the base. The void waves surged toward Han Dong and Miles like a tidal wave. The width of the waves covered the entire world. There was no way to avoid it. Once it came into contact with a life, it would directly strip away the body and soul. Miles, the bodyguard, was not afraid at all as he stared at the approaching wave. He kept releasing the murderous aura accumulated by the 10,000 executions, trying to fight the void waves head-on. However, this was Richard's territory. If the two clashed, Miles would lose without a doubt. At this moment, Boss Han stood up. He patted Miles's shoulder lightly and signaled him to step back. Facing the crazy void waves, Han Dong smiled. He did not even have the intention to defend. In the blink of an eye, the waves arrived and drowned all the invaders. "The vastness of the void will not tolerate your blasphemy." Dean Richard noticed that something was amiss. As the person in charge of the hospital, he had a certain understanding of the situation of every resident. The ultimate human demon Miles had a strong body. He would not be swallowed and killed in an instant. Currently, under the waves, he could not feel the existence of any life. It was very strange. Director Richard, who noticed the abnormality, immediately withdrew all the void fluids he released. At the place where the invaders were, there was a little black sand and a sandy passage that led underground. Boom! A strong collision sound came from the bottom of the Black Pyramid. After the seal on the stone door was broken, it was destroyed by brute force. When Han Dong went to the other world in the void last time, he did not do nothing. Instead, he confirmed a very important point. He obtained an important piece of information. The geology here could be turned into sand. Director Richard's large-scale attack was exactly what Han Dong wanted. He wanted to take the opportunity to burrow underground and invade the pyramid. Detected a change in intimacy level. Intimacy level with important resident, 10 demons. Richard Powell has changed. Hostility, hatred. Main mission number 5 activated. The Black Pyramid in the Void. Chapter 650. Main plot number 5. The Black Pyramid in the Void. Requirements. Choose one of the 2-1. Uncover President Richard Powell's shocking conspiracy. After obtaining enough evidence, escape from the void and rush to the town hall to report the situation to the mayor personally. Need to be led by a member of Dry Town, too. Kill President Richard Powell, keep enough evidence at the scene, and let the town hall staff go to the pyramid personally to investigate. Reward guaranteed Dry Town permanent individual residence. Head of household, verified by the town hall, a talent apartment. Reward, possible the secret treasure in the pyramid. I haven't completed the main plot yet, and here's another one. However, since the system had already notified me, it meant that President Richard was indeed trying to create a void army to invade Dry Town. However, the so-called shocking conspiracy was probably not as simple as creating a void army and starting a rebellion. When he stepped into the hospital, President Richard was still carrying out his experiment. This experiment might involve a deeper level of horror. As long as he obtained enough evidence and handed it to the mayor, he would be able to obtain a huge reward. If he could complete the double main plot, it would also be beneficial to achieve a perfect ending for the Clown Returns. However, I have to be careful at every step. I hope the female corpse, Miss Jane, has already received the note I left behind. Han Dong, who had already stepped into the lowest level of the Black Pyramid, quickly completed the relevant thoughts and made changes to the original plan. Han Dong currently had 4 chess pieces in his hands. Chun-Li had been arranged to stay in the hospital, and when the time was right, he would destroy the altar. Next, he would use the second chess piece. Nicole, with Han Dong's shout, a large number of pink tentacles overflowed from her body, and Nicole revealed her true form. Void. I remember Father said to avoid contact with void beings as much as possible. What we killed just now was only a converted believer. It will be difficult to deal with the president. It's okay, Nicole. You only have one mission. Find the last altar hidden in the pyramid. With your tentacles, you will definitely be able to destroy it. As for the president, we will deal with him. Han Dong said the word we. Hell's cultivator, Togu, had appeared. The attributes of reinforced iron bones were on par with Miles's hardness, and both of them had demon attributes. However, their origins were completely different. Togu, demon language. Miles called out Togu's name. Togu also nodded slightly, indicating that they were only considering how to deal with Dean Richard at the moment. If there were any other questions, they would have to wait until they left. Double bodyguard activated. In this operation, the 2 demons will act as Han Dong's right-hand men to deal with the 5th resident together. Nicole stared at Han Dong. It was obvious that she couldn't stop him. She could only nod. I'll do my best to find the altar. Yes. After saying that, Nicole used the secret technique of the deep sea again, turning herself into a mass of completely transparent seawater and moving forward in the pyramid. With the attention of Han Dong and the 2 burly bodyguards, the possibility of Nicole being discovered was very low. Come, let's begin exploring the Black Pyramid. After Boss Han spoke, the 2 bodyguards also used their abilities to release their aura. The effect they needed was to attract Dean Richard's attention. Even if the murderous aura in Hell's lava crazily overflowed and brazenly destroyed the internal structure of the pyramid, no void creatures came to the door. Walking in the passage didn't trigger any traps. It seems that Dean Richard is a person who won't be easily affected by emotions. His mind wasn't disturbed by our invasion of the pyramid at all. He even let us go deep into the pyramid. Is he planning to wait for us to reach the deepest part and directly catch us in one fell swoop? The pyramid is built with void ore and can't be turned into sand. We can only move forward slowly. Just as Han Dong was escorted by the bodyguards to a fork in the road, a void fluid overflowed from the wall. In front of the three people, a head emitting starlight was constructed. Han Dong immediately reached out to stop the bodyguard's attack and let the head form. Please come with me. Sir Richard admires your courage and recognizes your ability. He wants to invite you to the void space to discuss some things that you may be interested in. If you are willing, please come with me. If you're not willing, please continue to go deeper. Okay, I'll go with you. Han Dong liked to negotiate the most, whether there were traps or not. The group would go to the deepest part of the pyramid anyway. Now, that someone was willing to lead the way, and at the same time, there was an opportunity to sit down and talk. Han Dong naturally wouldn't waste it. At the same time, Han Dong continued to pat Miles' shoulder and whispered a few words in his ear. Han Dong's whispers were still very useful, calming Miles' irritable mood quickly. In the process of moving forward with the starlight head, Han Dong maintained 100% of the magic eye state. He would try his best to spy, remember, and deduce the internal structure of the pyramid. It's a very complicated route with no specific rules. Some forks may lead back to the origin or may lead to a secret research room. There are road signs hidden in a very small number of stones. The pyramid should be completely divided into an inner and outer layer. The outer layer corresponds to a large number of research rooms, and there are a large number of stairs that lead to the upper and lower floors of the outer layer. So far, we have been moving around the outer layer. I estimate that Dean Richard and his main void research room are in the inner layer of the pyramid. The entrance to the inner layer is completely opposite to the entrance we entered. We need to go around the outer layer half a circle. It was as Han Dong expected. After walking half a circle in the outer layer, they came to the stone door that led to the inner layer. With the head's approval, the stone door moved down with a rumble. A void passage that looked like a river of stars appeared. After passing through this passage, you will arrive at the void space. Sir Richard is waiting for you inside. Wait a minute. Han Dong wasn't in a hurry to pass through the passage. Instead, he reached out and touched the wall of the void passage. As the energy in his brain was consumed, waves of filthy energy were injected into the wall by Han Dong's tentacles, gradually canceling out the void energy contained in the stone. It was forcibly turned into an ordinary stone passage, removing the potential threat. This scene made the Starlight Head, who was leading the way, a little scared. It looked at Han Dong with a frightened expression. It seemed to feel the same powerful ability in Han Dong as Dean Richard. Chapter 651. In the inner space of the pyramid, some kind of color was suspended in the air. The top was like a sphere, and the bottom poured down in the form of a waterfall, expressing a strange brilliance. Pink, purple, red, it was difficult to describe with existing words. Even the color itself had transcended the definition of a spectrum. These colors were like a pure color, but also like a kind of living thing. Han Dong actually felt uncomfortable when he saw such colors in his eyes. Manic, angry, or sad. All kinds of emotions were drawn out by these colors. The phosphorescence emerging from the well can't help but give people a strange feeling, a feeling of doom. This feeling is far beyond any scene that their consciousness can conceive. The colors are no longer just sparkling, but gushing out from the well. When this invisible torrent of unrecognizable colors leaves the well, it seems to flow directly to the sky. H.P. Lovecraft, The Color of Stars. Han Dong decisively chose to close his eyes, using only his little magic eye as his only vision. The magic eye he learned from the necromancer's manuscript was not affected by colors, and it could not be invaded. At the same time, Han Dong also used the black sand to cover the eyes of the bodyguards. Then, with the fine black sand closely arranged, he made a tailored black suit for Togu, who was 9 meters tall, and Myers, who was more than 2 meters tall. This kind of scene was a bit similar to the meeting of a mafia boss. Just like that, They got used to the colors in just 1 minute. Stepping on the black, translucent stone steps, Void, Richard was on the round platform in the inner courtyard, waiting for the arrival of the guests. About 20 meters above the ground, there were a total of 10 mysterious believers in white priest clothes, with black triangles drawn on their face masks. They seemed to be monitoring the situation here. Han Dong stepped on the sparkling tiles, and he had a nagging feeling that there was something hidden underneath. Perhaps Dean Richard's important experiment area was hidden under his feet. Toga Myers, they are good residents that I am familiar with. I have always been a person who welcomes the strong. Please forgive my men for being blind. Please come and sit down. Dean Richard stretched out his right arm. A portion of the color in the sky separated and fused with the stones on the ground, quickly forming a colorful bench. Only Han Dong sat down. The two bodyguards stood on the left and right, ready to fight at any time. As soon as they met, Dean Richard praised Han Dong. If your disguise can fool my eyes, you can basically fool everyone in town. You can even make 2 demon residents work for you. I, Richard Powell, admire you very much. I want to discuss something with you. Dean, please speak. Han Dong was able to show a natural smile to any enemy, and it was the same in front of him. You've seen it for yourself. This is the color I obtained from the Supreme Void in exchange for dozens of years as a life form of a lower world that was close to a nation. I believe that you can also sense the power of this color. It is enough to overturn the power of authority. All life in Dry Town, even the grass and trees in the courtyard, would go crazy because of it. No matter how powerful the mayor was, he could not resist the madness of the whole town. You and I will not be affected by the color. I will win the mayor's position in this crazy revolution, and you will sit in the clerk's position. It all depends on what you think. Just as Dean Richard was surprised and threw an olive branch to Han Dong, trying to pull him into a crazy plan. A system prompt came one after another frowny face, as you are not affected by the color of stars. You have been recognized by Richard Powell, and the exclusive mission has been triggered. Once accepted, your relationship with Richard will change from hatred to neutrality. Reform mission, abnormal difficulty the color among the stars requirements. Join forces with Richard Powell to launch a full-scale invasion of Dry Town and kill the mayor. Once the mission is accepted, all residents whose intimacy level is lower than friendly will become absolute hostile. Reward, Node, Dry Town. Han Dong swallowed a mouthful of saliva when he heard the notification and reward. The reward was too tempting. Dry Town and the ghost story world were not on the same level. The residents here, if placed in the real world, could rival the hybrid demons. Once he obtained the node of Dry Town, Han Dong could slowly think of a way to bring the residents back to reality one by one. Moreover, the rent of Dry Town would be frighteningly high. Of course, just think about it. The reason why Han Dong dared to stand here and fight against one of the 10 demons, Dean Richard, to a large extent, it was because of Yellow Robe's request and also because of the guarantee that he would not be affected by the mark. Otherwise, Han Dong would not take this risk. Now, one of the 10 demons said that he wanted to join forces with Han Dong to deal with the remaining 10 demons and all the residents in the town. The fate system also kindly gave an abnormal difficulty notification. Even if Han Dong was crazy, he would not agree to cooperate. Of course, this kind of psychological activity would not be expressed through his face. Han Dong had to delay for a while. During this time, he needed to let his 100% magic eye analyze the essence of color. Also, Nicole had not sent any news about the altar. Han Dong asked, "What if I agree to cooperate? When do you plan to do it?" "Of course not now. My experiment is not yet complete. I will launch a full-scale attack after I have accumulated all the void forces. It is estimated that it will take another year. Once the cooperation is established, you will enjoy the protection of a central hospital for a year. I can also write a recommendation letter for you to get a residence permit and a corresponding job. In the meantime, you may try to win over the other inhabitants. All the resources in the hospital will be available for your use." Han Dong nodded thoughtfully. "A year? I wonder if Dean Richard has enough information to support this change. Let's take the most basic question. Do you know anything about the mayor? Of course I do. I will continue to collect information for the next year. Han Dong's eyes changed, and he immediately asked, "Can you show me the information about the mayor? After reading it, I will decide whether to join." At this time, Dean Richard's gray and black face, which was full of pits, showed an unpleasant expression. "No, I will only provide this top-secret information after you confirm to cooperate with me. Also, you seem to have no intention of cooperating with me. You even sent your subordinates to the hospital and the pyramid to try to find my altar." Hearing this, Han Dong's heart suddenly trembled. Chapter 652. When Dean Richard mentioned the pyramid and the hospital, Han Dong's heart skipped a beat. Han Dong had complete faith in Nicole's abilities. With him and his two bodyguards attracting a great deal of attention, it was basically impossible for Nicole, who was hidden, to be discovered. In fact, there was only one reason that Han Dong could think of for her to be discovered. Was there a problem with the altar itself? At this moment, Nicole was brought to the inner layer of the pyramid by a mysterious person. The person who suppressed and restrained Nicole was the other Dean Richard. At present, the two deans appeared in front of Han Dong at the same time. One was discussing cooperation with Han Dong, while the other was restraining Nicole and bringing her here. This was the secret of the altar. The so-called shattering of the altar in the illustrated handbook can weaken Dean Richard's abilities to a certain extent. So this is what it means. Every statue symbolizes one of Dean Richard's true avatars. When the main body dies, Dean Richard can also be reborn through any statue, which is the true avatar ability. Weakening the ability is, in fact, reducing one of his true avatars. Derry Town's Central Hospital pet room. Miss Chun-Li, who had merged with the shadows, was quietly waiting for Han Dong's orders. One of the altars was in front of Chun-Li. Chun-Li, who had been temporarily endowed with the power of the tentacles, could be destroyed with a single slash. However, at this moment, the flesh bubbles suspended inside the altar suddenly underwent a drastic change. Like cell division, it rapidly produced small flesh bubbles that assembled into hands, feet, torso, and head. Chun-Li sensed the danger and quickly fled into the shadows. She had just run 10 meters away. A void ray directly penetrated the shadow and pierced Chun-Li's heart. Due to the intense pain, Chun-Li was separated from the darkness and slammed heavily into the iron door of the pet room. Due to the special nature of the void ray's injury, energy could not be used to fill the wound, and blood flowed continuously. Fortunately, the tentacles that Han Dong had left in Chun-Li's body happened to offset the corrosion of the void ray's energy and barely saved her life. A man wearing a priest's robe stepped forward barefoot. With a stretch of his hand, all the cages in the pet room opened. The group of cats fused towards Mr. Kuda and turned into a huge mutated feline. They treated Chun-Li as a delicious meal that they had never seen before. Zong. Chun-Li swung the kitchen knife in her hand. Whoosh, dozens of stray cat heads fell to the ground. With the time she had gained, Chun-Li covered her bleeding chest with one hand and swung the knife again with the other. She slashed at the door lock in an attempt to break the door open. However, crack! The kitchen knife flew out of her hand, causing Chun-Li's right hand to tremble. There was some kind of unknown rune flowing slowly on the door. Chun-Li, who was seriously injured, couldn't break it open. At this time, the heads of the stray cats that had fallen all over the ground were reattached to their bodies. Mr. Han Dong, I'm sorry. When Chun-Li was certain that she was going to die, her last words were only an apology to Han Dong. The moment before death, Chun-Li, who was leaning against the metal door, could faintly hear the sound of wheels grinding in the hospital corridor outside the door. The Void Realm. Due to the revelation of the plan to find a shrine, Director Richard instantly had the feeling of playing with Han Dong in his hands. As long as the shrine existed, he would not die. Moreover, Each shrine corresponded to one of Director Richard's true avatars. Han Dong currently placed all his main forces in the inner layer of the pyramid, and the subordinates who were used to find the shrine were also discovered. Director Richard had a feeling of being a general. In his opinion, it was impossible for the young man in front of him, who had commonality with him, to refuse his invitation. Director Richard smiled and spread his arms. "I'm quite generous. As long as you agree to cooperate with me, I won't care about the shrine. Join me and embrace the void. I'll give you 30 seconds to make a decision." After saying that, Richard's true avatar threw Nicole toward the strange colors. Nicole couldn't resist and was immediately wrapped around by the silk-like colors. Once 30 seconds passed and Han Dong didn't give an answer or refuse the proposal, Nicole would die. 30, 20. In the last 10 seconds, Director Richard also pointed his 10 fingers and began the final countdown. Han Dong seemed to be still considering, or perhaps he was doing something during this time. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. At this moment, Han Dong breathed a sigh of relief. The analysis is complete. Phew, I made it. Togu, Myers, help me suppress Director Richard. Han Dong was quite glad that Director Richard gave him 30 seconds to make a decision. He could concentrate on the analysis of the color of stars. Chroman posture, the bone wing spread out. With a flutter, a wave of air spread out from under his body. Han Dong flew straight to Nicole, who was wrapped in the colors at full speed. Seeing that Han Dong's body was completely immersed in the colors, Director Richard showed a disappointed expression. At first, he was indeed very optimistic about Han Dong. But now, Han Dong's death-seeking action disappointed Richard greatly, and he couldn't help but laugh. What a fool! Do you think you can go deep into the colors just because you can adapt to the void environment? This is not a color that can be seen with the naked eye. This is a color that transcends the universe and cannot be found in the spectrum. It is an extraterrestrial star cluster that can never be full, and everything that touches it will be swallowed. After saying that, Richard no longer looked at Han Dong and turned his attention to the two tall bodyguards, as if he was sure that Han Dong would die. Hell Monk, an ultimate human demon. I don't know what kind of product I will get after I brand you, but I hope you can become one of my generals. Unable to resist, unable to avoid, unable to get rid of. A black triangle mark appeared on their bodies, and some kind of abnormal process began to take place. However, Han Dong's end was different from what the director expected. When he broke into the colors, he did feel an indescribable sense of erosion and suppression. These colors could ignore the obstruction of the skin and flowed into Han Dong's body, dyeing every cell with a colorful color, and even burst out on the surface of the skin like a flower. Warning! Warning! The faceless skull is currently at a low level and is currently not compatible with star color, infant. If the total amount exceeds 70%, it will cause the body to disintegrate. Han Dong used the magic eye as a guide and moved forward as much as possible between the colors of the stars. Nicole, whose thoughts had been led to outer space, was suddenly pulled back to reality because of this shout. The pink tentacles on the surface of her body wriggled slightly. Nicole, give me your hand. Most of her senses had been deprived, and even if Nicole opened her eyes, she could only see the blurred colors and the overlapping shadows of space. She could only follow the shout and reach out in a certain direction. Slowly, Nicole's fingertips felt a familiar warm touch. Chapter 653. Just as Han Dong spread his wings and flew towards color, the two bodyguards moved at the same time. Toga threw out two iron chains burning with hellfire at the same time and wrapped them around the Dean's true clone. Then, Miles and Dean Richard would fight one-on-one. Ultimate human demon, you're the same as me. Through controlling a country, you've obtained the right to level up from the small world you're in. Now that you've invaded my territory, you won't be protected by Dry Town's management method. I can take this opportunity to make you my strongest subordinate. This way, I can take another step forward in my plan. While the Dean was fantasizing about his plan, Miles had already arrived in front of him. He raised the moonlight table knife above his head and made a posture of 3 consecutive slashes. It should be known that Richard's physical fitness was not high. Under such close proximity, it was impossible for him to dodge. Slash. However, when the moonlight blade came into contact with Dean Richards' black skin, it felt as if it was cutting into liquid. It could not touch his real body at all. Michael Miles, 3 slashes to kill a god. All attacks are physical. Killing intent and weapons can break magic to a certain extent. However, your understanding of the void is basically zero. The pyramid is my main battlefield. You can't possibly be my opponent. When the 3 slashes were made, Richard was unscathed. Not even a layer of moonlight imprint was left on him. However, there was a detail here. Miles' execution could not be avoided. These 3 slashes were not completely useless. After the 3 consecutive slashes, 3 dim moonlight imprints appeared on the surrounding white-clothed priests. It was similar to damage transfer. With 10 priests here, it was enough to withstand a total of 30 slashes. Just as Miles' 3 consecutive slashes failed to cause any damage. A dagger inlaid with a void gem and curved like a snake's blade had been inserted into the center of Miles' back at some point in time. Void God's sacrificial dagger, a tool used against people. One of Dean Richards' major killing weapons. It actually pierced into Miles' body. At this moment, the void array hidden in the ground in advance was activated and acted on Miles alone. Void gravitational field, without any excess, it directly increased the gravity by 100 times. However, Miles was not completely crushed. Instead, he knelt on one knee. Such a strong physical quality also caused Dean Richard to reveal a look of desire. Super body, Richard waved his hand, drawing the void chi to form an arm that completely pressed down on the half-kneeling Miles, with the dagger in the center of his back as the guide. The 10 personal priests on the altar began to chant some kind of ancient language, injecting a kind of ancient energy into Miles' body, accelerating the activation of the void mark by nearly 10 times. Even though Miles's will was extremely strong, and he had the support of countless baleful auras, he still had the support of his will. However, the process of void invasion was irreversible. Miles's body was constantly being transformed, just when everyone thought that Miles would not be able to put up any resistance. Whoosh! Suddenly, he raised his hand and slashed. Cutting through President Richard's body, the priest's dress was cut in half. On the calf covered by the dress, the number 5 was printed, representing President Richard's ranking as one of the 10 devils. At the same time, another moonlight imprint appeared on one of the priests. This slash really gave President Richard a fright. Then, he used the power of the void to bind Miles' arm, his eyes revealing a look of astonishment. A change in the ether layer. Thin streams of starlight appeared on Miles' arm, and illusory tentacles grew out from within. Unbelievable! I've already used the dagger as a guide, but the transformation speed is still so slow. As expected of the ultimate humanoid devil. I'm really looking forward to your appearance after you've completely transformed. The stronger Miles' performance, the happier President Richard was. On the other side, Toga was locked in a fierce battle with his true doppelganger that had achieved the super body. Under the super body state, President Richard's strength and agility attributes both rose to B+. Together with the external armor constructed from the void, he had an extremely strong fighting ability. Losing the right to reside and being enslaved by an outsider. Togu, you seem to have weakened quite a bit. However, I'm still very interested in the pain structure of you monks. Wait until I've dealt with the ultimate humanoid devil, then I'll deal with you. As for the master you want to protect, he's just a stupid guy. He actually dared to barge into the star color with his physical body. He's simply courting death. In the chessboard that President Richard saw, he was in an absolute advantageous position. Suddenly, he didn't know that this game didn't only have one main chessboard. There were also many unseen side chessboards. Due to the invasion of the void, his body became distorted. Even this ultimate humanoid devil let out a strange cry. It wasn't Miles who let out the cry, but the soul that had fallen under his blade. If this continued, Miles' physical body would be reconstructed. Once he completely entered the second stage of the Starlight Layer transformation, Miles would completely die. Hearing such a beautiful cry and feeling the smooth progress of the ceremony, President Richard couldn't help but sigh. You think you can face the void directly, but you don't know that when you try to spy on it, you've already become food for the void. Ha! Ha! One of Dean Richards' feet stepped on Miles's head as he threw his head back and laughed. Just as he was completely indulging in the joy of victory, a commanding voice transmitted into the minds of the two bodyguards at the same time. Kill him. Togu, who had been beaten up the entire time, directly raised his leg and kicked the president's clone away. The iron chain engraved with the scriptures of hell was suddenly thrown out and wrapped around President Richard, who was laughing loudly. At the same time, Miles, who had suffered 100 times the gravity, been pierced by the void, and had his back pierced by a dagger. He withdrew all the evil aura that had been released into his body, and a power that originated from a great demon erupted in his body. Thick black meridians swelled all over his body, and the demon's blood was flowing wildly in Miles' body. He forcibly raised the table knife and swung an almost impossible slash, cutting off President Richard's 2 calves. However, this attack alone wasn't enough to save the situation. The calves immediately regenerated, and the moonlight mark also appeared on the other priests. Oh, is this your final struggle? What's the use? A voice came from above, answering President Richard's question. It's useful. I've successfully attracted your attention. What? Hybrid demonization. President Richard wasn't allowed to raise his head. A bloody light descended. A blood-red dog head with hundreds of eyes forcibly tore apart the flowing starlight. Dozens of tentacle-like tongues stirred in the dog's mouth and directly swallowed President Richard's body in one gulp. Chewing the outer shell, the tentacle-like tongues completely destroyed the internal structure. Instant death. There was no time to transfer the damage. Chapter 654. Alien Demonization. Why did the Sacred City's Supreme Council attach so much importance to Han Dong? One of the reasons was that he was a major participant in the Great Betrayer incident as a trainee knight. Han Dong's alien demonization during the Knight Assembly was another main reason. In fact, after going through formal cultivation, knights who used the lives outside the city to break the seed would be able to use the power of the hybrid demons after 2 to 3 years. In other words, they would transform into hybrid demons. Such changes were often limited to 10%. If one was not strong enough and used too much of this power, it would lead to self-destruction. However, a small number of knights who broke the seed with alien demons, newborn, would shorten the time to master this power and have a higher adaptability. Han Dong. He was a knight who had never broken the seed with alien demons, mature, in the history of the Sacred City. As a result, Han Dong could undergo alien demonization as soon as he broke the seed. In the Knight Assembly, he also showed the flexible use of tentacles and maintained an absolute human form with a physique that was immune to pollution. Such a performance made the council more convinced that once Han Dong grew up, he would have a chance to change the situation of the Sacred City. At present, inside the Black Pyramid, Star Color, Infant, indeed gave Han Dong a headache. Even if he had immunity to pollution, the moment he flew into the Star Color, he would still be eroded by the strange light. He had to fully activate the gray tentacles and cover every inch of flesh under the skin to barely move along the color flow. As for the impact on the brain, it didn't matter. If he wanted to affect Han Dong's thinking, he had to surpass several levels. After tearing through the layers of color, he finally protected Nicole. At the same time, the little magic I was fully opened. He secretly observed the characteristics of Dean Richard. At the critical moment, he let the 2 bodyguards be responsible for attracting his attention and killing him by surprise. This kind of direct destruction of the body could not be transferred. However, Dean Richard would not die so easily. At the same time, when the body was destroyed, the little magic, I could vaguely see a void consciousness that was independent of space, passing through the dog's head and instantly transferring into the body of the real body. The primary and secondary transformation was completed in an instant. Rebirth happened in an instant. This was what made Dean Richard so terrifying. Because he was very close to Tugu, Dean Richard quickly pointed at him. Void Ray, its power was more than 10 times stronger than the Void Being's finger. Because of the 3 processes of crushing the original body, rebirth through consciousness transfer, and Void Finger, they were all completed in 1 second. Tugu simply didn't have time to react. His iron-like skin was penetrated by the light, and his heart was damaged. Although Tugu was still waving the iron chain, indicating that he could still continue to take a beating, but considering Tugu's future development, Han Dong immediately put him in prison and gave him treatment. Tugu's instant teleportation and disappearance also made the Dean puzzled. Space. You seem to have many abilities that I don't know about. I underestimated you. Dean Richard didn't show any anger towards the destruction of his body. Instead, he accepted it very happily and even apologized for his arrogance. With a wave of his hand, the sacrificial dagger left Miles back and returned to the Dean's hand. The void conversion for Miles was temporarily suspended. Rumble, the lower layer of the stone, temporarily sealed Miles at the bottom of the pyramid. The two looked at each other. Han Dong's current form had already exceeded Dean Richard's understanding. G-Virus, enamel transformation. This was the form that Han Dong used when he faced his patron's creation at the night conference. He let the G-Virus direct the enamel cells. Enamel structure, transparent, bright, and full of lines, like the perfect combination of biochemical technology and external armor. Even Han Dong's head was wrapped in translucent white enamel, only revealing a large enamel mouth full of sharp teeth that could chew through all food. His visual ability was completely given to the GI on his chest. At the same time, Han Dong continued to transform into a hybrid demon in his strongest battle form. With the help of Count's consciousness, blood-red tentacles grew on his right upper arm and formed a 100-eyed dog head. It was almost no different from the dog head that Scarlet Count activated at his peak. Such a perfect transformation, unaffected by the color of the stars. It seems that there's a higher-level divine item hidden in your body. After saying that, Dean Richards suddenly stretched out his hand. Void Mark, a black triangular mark, immediately appeared on Han Dong's neck. In the following battle process, as time passed, Han Dong's injuries and the radiation of the void matter in the pyramid would continue to deepen the void mutation and eventually die. But the yellow mark on the back of his left hand lit up slightly. The void mark on Han Dong's neck was forcibly changed into a yellow mark with 3 curved segments. The void mark that could not be resisted, avoided, or removed was forcibly covered by a higher level mark at this moment. To some extent, it meant that the 2 old kings were probably equally matched in terms of rank. The void mark was resisted, which greatly impacted Dean Richard's beliefs. During the period when he came into contact with the void, he realized that he was just an ant in the vast starry sky. By chance, he had a brief contact with the god of the void and obtained an unsolvable ability. In Dean Richard's mind, the void was unsolvable. It had always been so. No one could resist the void mark. The current situation caused Dean Richard to suffer an extremely serious impact on his beliefs. It seemed that the void was no longer unsolvable. There was some kind of existence that could be on par with the void. No, impossible. You were just using illusions to temporarily cover up the erosion of the void. Your body and your nerves will definitely fall in the void. Han Dong directly threw out a provocative sentence. Oh, so you were just a frog at the bottom of a well? You thought that you were lucky enough to come into contact with the void and become a supreme existence. You are even more stupid than I thought. This sentence caused Dean Richards' already shaken beliefs to immediately begin to collapse. No, kill you. As long as I kill you, I can once again prove that the void is impossible to resist. Dean Richard, who survived with his beliefs, would not be affected by any external emotional disturbances. However, due to the impact on his beliefs, extreme changes in his thinking would occur. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, from Dean Richard's back, 10 void tentacles that shone with starlight abruptly grew out and pierced through the 10 white-robed priests standing above him. It gave up the characteristic of damage transfer. He could directly use all the void energy to create a perfect void vessel. Come, let me welcome your arrival in advance. His palm guided. The colors of the stars floating in the sky poured down like a waterfall and flowed into Dean Richard's body. For a moment, the entire black pyramid began to tremble. Chapter 655. He saw the colors flowing into Dean Richard's body. With a rainbow-colored luster appeared on the surface of his body, Han Dong's first choice was to flee. The connecting passage between the inner and outer layers of the pyramid had been changed in nature by Han Dong in advance, so it would not be sealed. In addition, Han Dong had deeply memorized and scrutinized every route in the pyramid along the way. Even if the passage had changed, Han Dong could still find the correct escape route. However, before he fled, Han Dong used his demon eye to see through the ground and stared at the ultimate demonic human demon, Miles, who was sealed at the bottom by the Void Formation and the Void Stone. He transmitted a passage of demonic language into Miles's mind. It was as if he was saying, "If you don't help me, don't think about getting your salary during the Spring Festival." Obviously, Han Dong's words had a certain effect. It caused a certain demonic engine in Miles's body to be fully activated. The moment he received the feedback, Han Dong immediately ran toward the passage connecting to the outer layer as fast as he could. You want to run. The Dean, who was receiving the colors of the stars, was not completely motionless. Countless small eyes opened in the colors and locked on a Han Dong. Void Raya ray of light wrapped in a spiral of colors shot out in a straight line. Its power was stronger and more elusive than the one that pierced Toga's heart. Unexpectedly, Han Dong had no intention of dodging at all. He turned around and pointed. The Black Death Ray was mixed with some gray spots. When the two rays of light collided, gorgeous colors burst out. The wall that was affected immediately fell into a strange state of spatial iteration. Han Dong pressed down on his numb fingers and took the opportunity to escape. He returned along the original path, and with the death erosion and the frontal impact of his solid body, he broke through the layers of sealed stone doors and successfully escaped the pyramid area. Only Dean Richard, who was still receiving the colors of the stars, was left. Escape. From the moment you set foot in the Void Realm, you can't escape. Ahis. This feeling is stronger than I expected. Put it all into my body. As the colors of the stars flowed in, tiny stars appeared on the surface of Dean Richard's skin. 2. His originally sunken chest kept collapsing inwards, forming a complete cavity. 3. As the colors of the stars flowed all over his body, the remaining colors gathered in the void, forming a colorful galaxy with a meteorite belt, which became President Richard's brand new energy source. If one were to observe the flow of the gases carefully, they would discover that the void gases around Headmaster Richard were all flowing into the colorful star core in his chest. It was like an endless energy core that could engulf the surrounding energies. Richard, who was already close to becoming a god, was now even closer. The starry sky, the illusionary colors, the blur. The structure of everything has become clearer. Dean Richard let his body float directly in the air. He didn't go through the passage at all, but directly went through the wall. When his body came into contact with the pyramid wall, his body automatically completed 3 processes: assimilation, devouring, and release. The penetrated wall was dyed with the same color. In the end, Dean Richard chased after Han Dong, who was searching for an exit in a wasteland somewhere in the void. Super body. Due to the introduction of the colors of the stars, Dean Richard's strength and agility both reached a level. At the same time, he condensed a void coat that took into account both defense and large-scale attacks. A void cloak that was even larger than a human body hung behind him. The left and right sides turned into extremely sharp claws. With a wave of the Dean's hand, the void claws quickly cut through all enemies within a 5-meter radius. Moreover, each of the Dean's fingers could shoot out extremely destructive void rays. With both close and long-range attacks, coupled with the unlimited supply of energy from the colorful star core in his chest, Dean Richard was like a god at this moment. Die! 2 void claws attacked at the same time from the left and right. Count, another one. Han Dong's upper left arm also grew a bloody dog head. Ka. The fangs and claws collided with each other, and it was hard to tell who had the upper hand. In terms of essence, the two involve the attributes of the hybrid demons. Just 2 void arms are already too much for you. Seeing that Han Dong was tired of dealing with the sharp claws, Richard directly took out the extremely dangerous snake-shaped sacrificial dagger and rushed forward. Han Dong, who originally had a difficult expression, suddenly changed his expression. No, I'm faking it. The control of the bloody dog was fully under the control of Count's consciousness in his body. Han Dong had no pressure at all. He saw through it at a glance. He perfectly dodged the dagger's piercing. Accumulating power. The G-virus catalyzed the accelerated flow of red blood cells between the blood vessels, maximizing oxygen delivery and activating all the muscle cells in the body. Pulling back his arm, he directly gave a forward punch, smashing heavily on Dean Richard's face. Crack! The sound of bones breaking. This punch was thrown by Han Dong under the condition that the G-virus was completely released. At the same time, it also had extremely strong death corrosion and the super hardness of the tooth enamel shell. Furthermore, Headmaster Richard was also charging head-on, further increasing the power of this punch. The head was hit directly, and even the cervical spine was broken backward. The head and the body were in a 90 degrees vertical relationship, and the body suddenly flew backward. However, the body that flew backward stagnated in the air due to a burst of overflowing colors. Crack, crack, crack. The cervical spine automatically reconnected to its original position, and the head returned to normal. Most of Dean Richard's face had been smashed. Under the broken skull, it was full of flowing colors. Strange tentacles scuttled between the wounds, reconstructing the face. A little anger appeared on Dean Richard's face. The body has not fully adapted to the newly inserted star color. I can use this opportunity to familiarize myself with this body. He grabbed the air. The void condensed in his hand, and a long spear made of dark crystal was grabbed in Dean Richard's right hand. He gently exhaled at the long spear, and colors flowed out. They immediately wrapped around the long spear, giving it the characteristics of star color. The long spear's attack was not easy to observe and was more invasive. The sacrificial dagger was changed to be held in his left hand, and once there was a chance, he would stab it into Han Dong's body. Dean Richard, who had changed his posture, flew back along the original path. He saw that there were hundreds of crows in the air. Inferior magic. Without any movement at all, when the crows hit the surface of the Dean's body, they were swallowed by the colors. When he saw Han Dong still standing in the same place, the Dean had already conceived a perfect process of defeat. He used his sharp claws to stabilize the dog's head. The void spear with colors could not be dodged, and it could penetrate Han Dong's body from a distance. Then, he would stab the sacrificial dagger into Han Dong's chest. At that time, he could use the dagger as a guide to carry out a comprehensive void transformation on the target, and the outcome would be decided. However, one of Han Dong's hands behind his back had quietly taken out a crow staff, and some kind of strange magic was gathering at the tip of the staff. Chapter 656. Han Dong punched out with all his strength and temporarily repelled Dean Richard. He immediately used the head's ability to charge up some kind of special magic. Because of the fight just now, Count in his body was a little nervous. In the process of the fight, just now, it seemed to be a stalemate. In fact, Count, who was in charge of controlling the dog head, was under indescribable pressure. This old guy actually sacrificed the void life he created and then changed himself into a vessel. He put the young star color into his body with the help of a long-prepared ritual array. He is really not afraid of death. If there's a slight lack of control, or if he loses contact with the void god, this old guy will suffer a backlash. But also because of this, he temporarily gained two characteristics: adaptability and energy devouring. As long as you use your trick once, the next effect will be significantly weakened. Are you sure you want to use this trick? If the effect is not very good, we will lose without a doubt. Han Dong nodded and did not stop charging up the magic. I know, but I have to use it now. After all, the deceptive evasion just now can only be used once. The probability of being hit by the priest dagger next time is more than 70%. Although my physical defense can block most of the physical attacks, it can't block this divine dagger that is connected to the void. Once I am hit, I will be finished. Han Dong was very clear about the horror of the priest's dagger. The dagger's evaluation reached the A grade, the attack range was short, and the target could only be one person. Naturally, all the attributes were added to the hit effect. Okay, the target is the carrier of star color. It is impossible to kill it in one shot. I never thought of killing him with my own hands. This is the 10 demons. Speaking of this, Han Dong released a large number of crows with his free right hand, trying to delay a little bit of time. However, these crows with a certain death characteristic did not express their own characteristics. They were all swallowed as soon as they approached the Dean. As Dean Richard condensed a void spear in his hand that could increase the attack range, Han Dong was more convinced of his own judgment. Here it comes. The spear stabbed out. Because the surface of the void spear was wrapped in color, to a certain extent, it interfered with the prediction of the little magic eye and was difficult to see through. Han Dong did not mean to dodge at all. He just slightly adjusted his body to avoid the fatal parts as much as possible. Crack. Void has 3 properties: defense break, magic break, and corrosive. The translucent enamel shell was pierced through by the void spear. The blade of the spear brushed past Han Dong's right kidney. After passing through his body, it pierced straight into the ground, fixing Han Dong's body in place. There was no way to dodge the next dagger attack. Embrace the void. Dean Richard loosened his grip on the spear. Instead, he gripped the dagger tightly with both hands and aimed at Han Dong's head. Just as he was about to be hit, the right hand that was hidden behind his back suddenly swung out. It was no longer a punch. Instead, he waved his raven staff. Because the attack range of the staff was greater than that of the dagger, the head of the crow staff first pressed against Dean Richard's body. Staff? Even if you use a magic staff to increase the level of your inferior magic, it's still... what? Headmaster Richard relied on the fact that he had extremely high magic resistance. Now that he had absorbed the color of stars into his body, his adaptability and ability to devour all things would make him no longer afraid of any magic. However, as soon as Dean Richard touched the tip of the staff, he immediately sensed something dangerous. Touch of death. The dog heads that grew on Han Dong's left and right arms disintegrated into tentacles and retracted into his body. Through the operation of the magic circuit in his body, he mobilized all the tentacles that the faceless skull LV-2 could provide. Then, with the help of the raven staff, he injected a strong black death aura into the tentacles. This move was the strongest fatal attack that Han Dong could display among the moves that he had mastered so far. If it was used against a knight of the same level, it could instantly kill everything. When he released this move, the black crow wings unfolded on his back. It was like a crow of death. Death. Alex said that Han Dong's perception of death was special. His death was mixed with an extremely rare erosion, like a plague. Perhaps it had something to do with the plague that Han Dong himself practiced. The erosion was stronger than ordinary death. Gee, the black living crow at the head of the staff directly split open from its beak. Hundreds of tentacles mixed with a strong death aura drilled out from its body, causing the spots to be dyed black. Tentacles of death. The tentacles were like sharp thorns, instantly piercing hundreds of openings on Dean Richards' body and hanging 10 meters high in the air. However, there's a clear flow of color between the wounds. Try to push the tentacles out and also trying to repair the wounds. It was not over yet. Han Dong used magic to induce these tentacles of death to change again. Hundreds of tentacles intertwined and combined, turning into a giant squirming arm that held Dean Richard in it. The Dean was not allowed to struggle, squeezing with all his strength. The pressure given by the external force was higher than the pressure that the body could withstand. Like a balloon, pop! It exploded directly in the palm of his hand. The fragments of the body were entangled with a strong death aura, and they disappeared before they fell to the ground. This was the strongest killing move that Han Dong had reserved. Black magic plus weapon plus tentacles. The perfect combination of the three required the tentacles to be arranged in the magic circuit in the body in advance, a long time to accumulate power and a large amount of magic consumption. When the tentacles were retracted, the pale-faced Han Dong immediately supported himself with his staff, not letting his overexhausted body fall down. Piercing, crushing, and residue were all eroded by death. Even so, Dean Richard was still not dead. There were colors floating in the sky, and the tentacles of death could only barely disperse the colors, unable to completely erode them. The colors slowly converged, forming a star core with meteorite rings. Red intertwined to form blood vessels, black to form the skin, blue to form the internal organs, yellow to form the brain, green to form the tissues. As the number 5 formed on the calf, Dean Richard was reborn. However, when the rebirth was completed, he also knelt on one knee, his body twitching nonstop. It seemed that the blow just now had almost shattered him in the true sense, and there was no way to confine the star colors in his body. If it happened again, Dean Richard might really die. What a pity. You almost killed me. I didn't expect you to have such a killing move hidden. However, even if I die accidentally, there are still 8 altars in the hospital for me to resurrect, and there are more than 300 void creatures for me to absorb. The endless void provides me with energy. What do you have to beat me? Take him. Han Dong stretched out his hand and pointed. At some point, the purple-black Michael Miles had arrived. The purple-black body was larger than before, maximizing the demon engine in his body, standing upright behind Dean Richard. The table knife in his hand also turned into a more aggressive hell butcher knife due to the entanglement of the demon meat. Chapter 657. From the beginning, Han Dong never thought that he could kill Dean Richard, who symbolized the highest combat power in Dry Town, by himself. The reason why he chose to carry out the suggestion given by the Yellow-Robed Man, other than the yellow seal that could resist the Void Mark. There were also 2 important chess pieces that made Han Dong willing to carry out this super difficult challenge mission. One of them was Miles. Han Dong was not sure if he could kill Dean Richard, but Miles could definitely do it. Demon Engine was 100% activated. His height increased from the original 2 meters to a terrifying height of 2.5 meters. His skin was dark purple, and thick and strong blood vessels were prominent on the surface of his body. The most terrifying thing was the weapon in Miles' hand, Demonic Man's End table knife. The originally ordinary table knife had been entangled by the flesh and turned into a terrifying hell knife due to the injection of the demon liquid. Currently, as the 2 residents got closer, Dean Richard had just been reborn and had no time to react. Consecutive slashes. The attack range, attack speed, and pressure of the slash were far stronger than before. It directly cut through Dean Richard's void shield and opened 2 huge holes on his back. It was also because he sensed the threat of death that the Dean immediately jumped up the moment he was slashed. He barely dodged the 3rd slash. Want to run? Togu, lend me the chain. Because he had just used all the tentacles, there was no way to condense the blood dog. Knowing that the effect of black magic was extremely difficult to produce, Han Dong gritted his teeth. He let the G-virus forcibly activate the cells to provide an instant of explosive power. The two chains suddenly entangled. Then, through the contraction of the chains, Han Dong directly rode on Dean Richards' body. He resisted the devouring of the color of stars with all his strength. Even so, the tooth enamel covering the surface of Han Dong's body disintegrated and was absorbed by the star core in the Dean's chest. This cluster of star core should not be regarded as Richard's core. Recklessly touching it might lead to the contact being devoured. Even if the shell was absorbed, the skin was peeled off, and the hands became bloody, Han Dong was still unmoved. He held Dean Richards' head tightly. Spread the wings. It flapped its huge, feathered wings and forced Dean Richard, who had just leaped into the air, back to the ground. You think you can suppress me? Dean Richard turned his head and stared at Han Dong with eyes full of illusions, conveying a terrifying illusion among the stars. Individual is currently witnessing a high-level terrifying illusion. Intelligence is being tested. Intelligence will be reduced based on the results of the test. What a self-righteous frog in the well. I've seen far more terrifying things than this. Han Dong did not close his eyes or escape. Instead, he faced the deep space directly. Magic I 100%, 120%, 160%. The test has ended. Intelligence reduced to 0. The surface of the demonic eye was bloodshot as it glared at President Richard. In fact, some of its color had even been dispelled. Slap! The Dean's left eye exploded. Between the demonic eye and the color, there was no need to explain which was stronger. Boom! Richard's body was forcefully pressed back to the ground. Even though the palm used to suppress him had already turned into bones, Han Dong still had no intention of letting go. Miles arrived. The third cut was completed. Buzz. Since there was no void priest to help transfer the damage, the moonlight mark branded on the Dean's neck completely lit up. Execution was triggered. A hellish guillotine with stacked meat and black metal materials appeared out of thin air. Richard's head was placed in the gap. His hands and feet were bound, and he could not escape the execution process. The outcome of certain death was inevitable. However, under such circumstances, President Richard was not nervous or afraid at all. Instead, he smiled. It's about time. After fighting with you for so long, I've basically adapted to the colors of the stars in my body. When this body dies, I'll be able to change into a more perfect body. As long as I absorb all the sacrifices raised in the hospital, I'll be able to return to my peak state. At that time, other than the mayor, no one in Dry Town will be my match. Hurry up and execute me. I can't wait to change my body. At this moment, Han Dong signaled his bodyguard to not be in a hurry to pull down the guillotine. Han Dong, who was recovering from his injuries, half squatted in front of President Richard and asked softly, "Are you so sure that your clone in the hospital controlled my subordinates and the altar would not be destroyed? When I received the first-hand information about you, I felt that it was strange. The altar was clearly something very important to you. Why did you leave it in the hospital and not in the safer void otherworld? Obviously, the altar has a very strong autonomous defense system. That's why you dared to leave it in the hospital. Do you really think that I only left one thing in the hospital? Perhaps there's an even more powerful existence lingering in the hospital. It can kill all your clones without leaking any information. Even if your clone dies, you won't feel it here." As soon as Han Dong said this, President Richard immediately tried to contact his clone in the hospital. He did not receive any dangerous information from his clone. After executing Han Dong's subordinates, everything in the hospital was normal. Nothing happened. It was too quiet. The consciousness connection failed. None of his clones were left. For a moment, President Richard's confident eyes froze. From confidence to despair, and then to indescribable anger. "Jane! There's only one person who could kill all of his clones without him noticing, and that was the female corpse who was also in the hospital. After receiving the secret letter left by Han Dong, the female corpse chose to help, or rather, to help herself. As long as President Richard died, she would be able to take the position of the president. Of course, there was a great risk involved. If Han Dong failed to kill Dean Richard in the Void Realm, he would be able to kill Dean Richard. Once the president came out, he would report the rebellion in the hospital. The female corpse will be considered to have violated Dry Town's resident management rules. She will be severely punished by the mayor. In the letter, Han Dong wrote a paragraph that could make the female corpse believe him, a paragraph that could make the female corpse do things. This was Han Dong's second chess piece. Turning the tables, President Richard would die without a doubt. Confidence, despair, anger, just before the guillotine was about to fall, the moment before death. Richard showed the last emotion. His face, which was originally tense due to anger, suddenly relaxed. A look of relief flashed in his eyes. The process of following the void seemed to be very tiring. It seemed that President Richard did not take the initiative to follow the void. It seemed that he did not want to obtain great power. Perhaps the star luster obtained through the nurturing of countless believers and all kinds of sacrifices was not prepared for himself. President Richard used the last of his strength to exhale some non-threatening colors from his mouth. Shirley's soul needs color to fill in. Only then can she be completely repaired. Please let her continue to live. There were no last words for the void or the Lord. At the last moment of his death, President Richard thought of his daughter. The reason he chose to study death and step into the void was because as a doctor, Richard could only watch his terminally ill daughter die in his arms. Chapter 658. Town Hall. It was an ancient and deep dark corridor. Walking along this corridor without any restrictions, they walked down it without any restrictions. When one's mind and consciousness were no longer focused on the corridor, no longer thinking about how deep it was, and no longer hindered by the matter in front of them. A wooden door would appear in the corridor. Behind the wooden door was the mayor's office. The mayor didn't need to be responsible for too many things about Dry Town. It would only appear when Dry Town was seriously attacked, suffered a disaster, had a huge rebellion, or had a serious space problem. Generally speaking, the mayor was in the office, browsing through the long scrolls that represented the small worlds. From them, he selected some demons with potential and in line with the purpose of Dry Town, trying to guide them to become a member of the town. At this moment, the mayor suddenly stopped reading. A small statue displayed on a platform. An old man with withered black skin wearing a priest's dress and holding a snake-shaped dagger suddenly cracked from the middle, and pieces fell all over the ground. Seeing this scene, the mayor couldn't help but sigh softly. What a pity! If Richard had thirsted for power and pursued the void on his own, he could have stood in a higher position. It's too narrow-minded to rely solely on the obsession of his family to move forward in the void. The mayor reached out and touched the bell on the upper right corner of the desk. Ring. The bell only rang once before it returned to a static state. However, the sound of the bell summoned an extremely terrifying existence. A pale, delicate palm with long nails immediately pushed open the office door and crawled into the office through the crack of the door. At the same time, it was accompanied by a soft hum. La la la. Mayor, what's the matter? Richard is dead. The matter involves 2 residents. I need you to go to the Central Hospital to find out the cause of Richard's death and collect relevant evidence. Following the mayor's words, the mayor spoke. Several arms popped out from the crack of the door again, expressing surprise. Richard, even I have to put in a lot of effort to kill him. Moreover, in his hospital, it's impossible to kill him completely. His divinity allows him to possess almost infinitely. Besides, if a resident dies, shouldn't it be the prosecutor in charge of the investigation and evidence collection? Oh, could it be that she's involved as well? Well, let's find out the reason quickly. Jane won't break the balance for no reason. I believe there's more to this. Hearing the mayor's instructions, the woman with the arm was not too anxious. Instead, she continued to hum a song and said, La la la, It's good that this annoying old man is dead, but I'd rather the prosecutor die with him. Speaking of which, if the prosecutor was convicted of justifiable homicide, would the management of the hospital completely belong to her? This will cause problems with the balance. That won't happen. During this period of time, the hospital has to be managed by two people. Before the clown dies, no problems are allowed to happen. La la la. He retracted his arm from the crack of the door. The clerk personally went to the central hospital. Void otherworld. It's too difficult. Han Dong leaned back on the dozens of crows and gasped for breath. In the process of forcibly suppressing President Richard with his physical body just now, even with the strongest dental enamel protecting his body, he was still vulnerable under the devouring of the colors. In just a few seconds of contact, the dental enamel shell and flesh were completely annihilated. Only bones full of pits were left. Not only the arm, but even the body close to it was devoured. The gallbladder was gone, the stomach was incomplete, and there was a huge hole in the lungs. This was built on the premise that someone helped him. Without the help of the female corpse, President Richard had a total of 8 chances to be reborn. Moreover, during the process of rebirth, he would continue to absorb the sacrifices in the hospital to further adapt to the color of stars in his body. Even if Han Dong was not affected by the mark of the void, even if he had Miles' help, everyone would eventually die. However, President Richard, who had used himself as a vessel to accept the infant color of stars, mentioned in his words that no one in Dry Town could restrain him except for the mayor. This was a little scary. When he thought of the mayor, Han Dong could not help but feel his scalp go numb. Move. There were still things to do. The matter in Dry Town was far from over. Even if his body was badly damaged, even if the energy in his brain was completely exhausted, he had to move. Cut off the nerves of pain. A syringe inlaid with gold grew out of the incomplete white bone palm and pierced into President Richard, who had just been beheaded. As the syringe absorbed, the body disintegrated and dissipated. A mixture of color and cell essence was absorbed, a cell group that was completely different from the previous one. As mentioned before, Han Dong wanted to upgrade the level of the faceless head. The cell essence of the fate creature, matched with the apprentice knight, was no longer suitable. What Han Dong needed was this kind of boss-level cell essence in true fate. The LV-2 head matched with Han Dong, who had already become a knight, was obviously not enough. It must be upgraded as soon as possible. At the same time, Han Dong also took out a test tube and collected the color that President Richard exhaled before his death. He intended to fulfill Richard's last wish and inject the purified color into the little Loli's body. From the photo of the father and daughter on President Richard's desk, as well as the little Loli's rebirth from the void, but still retained her humanity, it was enough to see how much importance Richard attached to his daughter. I must quickly leave the hospital and return to Sam's farm to seek refuge. The consumption this time is too severe. I need to spend at least a few days to recover and study how to upgrade the faceless head. As for the main mission of killing President Richard, it won't be too late to receive the reward after I recover to my peak state. Speaking of which, why does the void otherworld still exist? Han Dong stared at the black pyramid in the void otherworld. It did not collapse because of the death of the president. There was no time to think now. Han Dong slowly recovered his body while cooperating with Miles to find the exit. During this time, he also had a simple conversation with Miles through Demon's Whisper. It seemed that they were talking about this salary for working overtime during the Spring Festival. Of course, the salary was not money, but the benefits that Miles obtained from this incident. Because the person who really killed President Richard was not Han Dong, but Miles. Once the town hall confirmed President Richard's rebellion plan, Miles, who killed the president, was bound to receive a reward and might even be re-rated and put into the ranks of the 10 demons. At the same time, because Miles executed President Richard, part of the void attribute was mixed into the baleful aura, making it more aggressive. This was the overtime salary that Boss Han gave. Chapter 659. After a short rest, the exposed white bones were wrapped in flesh. Due to the injury and excessive energy consumption, the arms could only be repaired. One was a mummified arm, and the other was a biochemical arm with a regular arrangement of flesh tubes. He stared at Miles, whose body was gradually fading away. Han Dong said a few words of gratitude in the demon language. However, Miles did not need any thanks at all. Instead, he was in a hurry to leave. Richard's death. The town hall will investigate it personally. You must leave, demon language. Han Dong nodded and supported his body with his staff. Due to Richard's death, the exit of the void otherworld had reopened. Through the small magic eye, he could see the transparent door at the border. Just as the two returned to the hospital together, the sound of wheels was heard. A familiar flatbed cart rolled out from the other end of the passage. In addition to the female corpse, Miss Chun Li was also lying on it. Han Dong immediately took Chun Li back into his body and healed her. Just as he was about to bow his head and thank the female corpse for helping him quietly eliminate all of Dean Richards' true clones and destroy the altar, he saw the cart rubbing crazily on the spot and even started a new mode of spinning. Obviously, the female corpse was very anxious. As Han Dong reached out to touch it, an anxious and worried voice was heard. Why are you still dawdling? Hurry up and leave. The death of the fifth demon has a huge impact on Dry Town. The town hall will personally send people to investigate the cause and the details of the incident. Even if Dean Richards secretly instigated a rebellion, as an outsider, you will still be wanted for killing a resident. I'll take you to Sam's farm. The neighborhood committee has a way to protect you. Hurry up and get on the cart. Just as the female corpse gestured for Han Dong to lie down on her little cart, a strange and gloomy aura suddenly came. In an instant, it suppressed the remaining aura of the void and Miles's remaining murderous aura in hospital. The passage also became a little wider. Miles, who was standing on the side, also took a step back. It seemed that the existence of the hospital made this ultimate demonic person somewhat fearful. The female corpse's voice also became low. It's too late. No matter what happens later, don't resist. All resistance is futile in front of the clerk. If you become a corpse, I will do my best to arrange for you to be by my side. Huh? Han Dong laughed awkwardly. He was not dead yet, but the woman was already interested in his body. Sweat trickled down his forehead. The presence that enveloped the hospital reminded him of that familiar scene from 3 years ago. La la la, a light and serene singing voice came from the tunnel. Around the corner, more than 20 crazily growing arms suddenly appeared. They were like Boston ivy plants, sticking close to the wall as they approached. Compared to the part of the arm that he had seen through the sewer cracks, the current scene was even more shocking. Is she the clerk? Han Dong swallowed a mouthful of saliva and tried his best to stabilize his mind. Perhaps due to the combination of the nightmares of the past and the pressure of the present. When he saw the current scene, Han Dong was judged by the system as intelligence -1. Prosecutor Jane Doyle, electrician Michael Miles, you are temporarily detained by the town hall because you are involved in the death of the director of Dry Town Central Hospital, Richard Powell. As for this outsider, he will... The presence on your body is a little familiar. As one arm grabbed the cart of the female corpse, the other arm wrapped around Miles' body. The third arm came in front of Han Dong. Like a blooming flower, a woman's head with wet black hair grew from the palm of the hand. Due to the cover of the black hair, only the high bridge of her nose could be vaguely seen. She stared at Han Dong. Under the black hair, a pair of moist, light blue lips faintly appeared and spoke faintly. She said faintly, "So it's you. 3 years ago, it was you who lured Pennywise to the connection between the outside world and the inside world, right? So that I could capture him again. He is a felon who escaped from Dry Town." Yes. Han Dong hurriedly put on a professional smile and nodded in confirmation. However, the current incident and the previous incident cannot be considered together. Director Richard is an important figure in Dry Town. As an outsider, you appeared at the scene of the incident, you may have to bear the main responsibility. Now, you need to be locked up in the detention center of Dry Town as a key person in the illegal invasion and suspected murder of Director Richard. All of a sudden, the woman's head between the black hair opened her mouth wide. Dozens of delicate infant-like arms suddenly emerged from within and were about to forcibly take Han Dong away without allowing him to resist. Of course, Han Dong, who was still in a weakened state, was unable to resist. He had a feeling that the detention center was a very dangerous place. At the critical moment, *Ling, the aisle window beside them suddenly shattered. Some of the shattered glass directly pierced into their arms. A figure quickly stepped into the hospital. A large number of straws immediately wrapped around the clerk's arm, preventing him from taking Han Dong away. Director Sam, are you shielding a suspect? If you're found guilty, you will lose your title as the director of the neighborhood committee. The scarecrow, Sam, who sat on the shoulder of the shell, ate a lollipop while taking out a newly made resident's household register. It symbolized permanent residency in Dry Town. It seemed that Sam had made the household register in advance before Han Dong completed his mission. The time of entry was before Director Richard's death. In other words, Han Dong killed Director Richard with 2 other residents as a normal resident. He was not an intruder. Before the truth of the matter was found out, Han Dong would not be forcibly locked up in the detention center. It seems that the information I got here is not timely. In this case, please wait for the results at your respective household registration addresses before the matter is found out. I will find out the truth of the matter. Just as the clerk's arm was about to be retracted, the scarecrow, Sam, also took out his unique neighborhood committee management certificate. I will also join the investigation. Okay, the arms that covered the corridor were all retracted. The pressure then disappeared. From the beginning to the end, Han Dong did not get to see the real face of the scribe, but the pressure she brought was far greater than any of the residents Han Dong had ever met. Thank you. Sam handed the household register and a farm key to Han Dong. Naturally, he motioned for Han Dong to return to the farm first, before leaving the hospital. According to Director Richard's last words, Han Dong injected the little Loli, who was still in a coma. This would help in the subsequent investigation of the truth. Somehow, although the woman singing did not show any coercion from her words, Han Dong still felt uncomfortable. Chapter 660. At the same time, a voice rang out. The Dragon City team. The task that was Zipping and the others received from the clerk included 2 aspects. First, they were required to sort out the anomalies in Dry Town and the list of missing residents for the past 10 years. They were required to search the houses of the missing residents and determine the true situation of at least 20 of them. Second, they were required to capture a fugitive wanted by the town hall. The fugitive was an original resident who had seriously violated the laws and regulations of Dry Town. They had killed other residents and ignored the warning of the town hall. They were all extremists who were powerful and had no possibility of negotiating. They would fight to the death when they met. The tasks had to be carried out simultaneously. Therefore, Hua Zipping made a decision. He asked Gong Sun Hao, who was second only to himself in combat, and Ma Tao Tao, who was good at organizing documents, to stay with the clerk to organize the documents of the missing residents and investigate the situation. He and the narrow-eyed young man, Yu Wu, embarked on the journey to hunt down the fugitive. Once they completed the mission, they would be recognized by the town hall as a collective residence. However, something happened during this period, something that made Hua Zipping feel uneasy. There were many fugitives wanted by the town hall, including some who had not been caught for more than 100 years. They only needed to pick one from the fugitive handbook to capture. The list of fugitives included the puppet woman, Mary Shaw, whom Hua Zipping and the others had first met in the tunnel. Because they had come into contact with Mary Shaw in advance and had the picture handbook file of Mary Shaw, Hua Zipping set a goal. Once they killed Mary Shaw, they would meet one of the requirements of fate, basic requirements, as long as they obtained a permanent residence permit as usual. The basic requirements of the inner chapter would be 100% met. The team could leave the Fate Realm at any time and return to Dragon City. Of course, if they wanted to get the final treasure, they had to explore deeply as residents. After confirming the target to capture, out of curiosity and consideration for some follow-up plans, the Dragon City team continued to flip through the Fugitive Handbook, trying to find information about the clown. However, they did not find any relevant information. Strange, Pennywise should be on this list too, right? After all, you should have escaped from Dry Town. At this moment, Yuwu, who was in the team, heard the noise in the archive room. I'm here. Yuwu immediately took out a white paper of the captured people from the archive cabinet. The clown, Pennywise, was one of them. However, the information about the arrest and the various files on the clown were all crossed out by a dense line. Only one sentence remained. The clown has been arrested by the clerk. Due to the reasons mentioned above, he has been imprisoned in the deepest part of Drew Town. I'm afraid that the Joker's secret involves the very foundation of Dry Town. It just so happens that Mary Shaw seems to know some secrets about the clown as well. Let's prepare to depart. Captain, have you thought how to deal with Mary Shaw's tongue-pulling problem? Yuwu was still a little afraid when he thought of the old puppet woman. Yes. The clerk was also a vehicle specially prepared for them to capture fugitives. With a license plate, they would not be attacked by any normal residents and could reduce the perception of the vehicle to a certain extent. Not long after they got into the car, in the direction of Dry Town Hospital, a black and purple light suddenly shot up into the sky, even dispersing the clouds. This kind of explosive void energy made Hua zipping and the others sweat profusely. At the same time, a few traces of contamination appeared at the corners of their eyes. A small team of dependents? No. It's confirmed that it's only us and the Holy City's team. Could it be that the residents of Dry Town have dependents? Fortunately, we didn't encounter any. Captain, the noise from the dependents is weakening. They seem to be dead, Yuwu said in a low voice. Could it be Nicholas and the others who did it? Clap, clap, clap. At this moment, there was a terrifying sound of palms hitting the ground in the town hall. Hundreds of arms crawled out of the wall and carried the clerk's body to the hospital. I hope they're all right. Hua Zipping still had a good impression of Han Dong. Although there might be a conflict of interest between the two teams in the future, he did not want Han Dong to die just like that. Then, the two of them drove the old Lincoln sedan and set off for the mysterious tunnel hundreds of kilometers away. The sedan maintained a speed of 100 kilometers per hour and drove on the asphalt road outside Dry Town. Suddenly, there was a roaring sound of an engine behind them. A farm truck appeared in the rearview mirror. The person driving the truck was the mechanical scarecrow that Hoi Zipping had seen on the farm. There was also a scarecrow child licking a lollipop sitting in the passenger seat. This is Hua Zipping immediately entered a state of battle readiness. Unexpectedly, there was a sharp turn in front of them. Yuwu, who had just learned how to drive, could only slow down. The farm truck behind him accelerated and did a drift, instantly overtaking them through a perfect drift. It seemed that a certain racing song was playing in the farm truck. Is that Nicholas? When they were overtaken, Hua Zipping immediately found a young man lying in the box of scarecrows, seriously injured and unconscious. Seeing this, Hua Zipping had already put his right hand on his waist and was ready to stage a chase. He wanted to rescue Han Dong from the scarecrow. However, Yuwu's ears heard Han Dong's snoring among the noise. He reached out to stop the captain's attack. He seems to be sleeping. The scarecrow is not hostile. Captain, this captain of the Holy City is much more shrewd than we expected. He seems to have established contact with the important residents in the farm area in advance. The scarecrow, who is the owner of the farm, seems to be in charge of Dry Town. Back then, when we left the farm first, it seemed to be the result of Nicholas's deliberate urging. They're very likely to have returned to the farm after we left. Hua Zipping nodded slightly and moved his hand away from the hilt of his sword. Now that you mention it, what happened on the farm is indeed a bit strange. When we get the permanent residence permit, we'll consider their problem. While Hua Zipping and you were discussing the car. They were suddenly overtaken again. It was not a car that overtook them, but a clean cart that drew a perfect drift line on the road. There was a corpse on the cart. The two were so frightened that they immediately stepped on the brakes. When they looked closely, there was nothing in front of them. In the farm truck, Han Dong was enjoying the rest after the battle. Under the protection of Director Sam, he only needed to sleep. At the same time, before Han Dong got in the car, he learned from Sam that his two teammates had mined enough ore and were forced to return to the farm in advance by Sam. Next, it was time to enjoy the fruits of the battle. Han Dong was ready to evolve the faceless head. Chapter 661. When Han Dong woke up, it was already the morning of the next day. He was sleeping on a pile of straw in a barn. Even though he had fully recovered, the side effects of his serious injuries and energy consumption had not completely disappeared. Even a most basic walk would cause him to feel dizzy, and his hand were numb. Cass stayed by his side the whole time, sleeping on the pile of straw. "Hey, Cass." "Yes, you're awake." Cass was also very tired. The process of searching for ores was very difficult. When he woke up, there was still some tiredness in his eyes. "Where's Diane?" She went to the convenience store to prepare food. Everyone hasn't eaten for a day. Also, Diane used a little hybrid demon energy in a mine. It seems like she needs a lot of calcium to replenish it. As Cass spoke, he went forward to support the weak Han Dong. "Hybrid demon?" "Yes. The teammates you found are really reliable." It was also thanks to Diane that our search for ores went very smoothly. When we left the mine and were about to go back to Dry Town to look for you, we were stopped by Sam. He asked us to go back to the farm directly and said that he would personally bring you back. Something big seemed to have happened in the hospital. "What happened? Did you get your brain?" Han Dong took out the collective account page from his pocket. "Yes, we got it." "Then, our next step is to choose a relatively easy resident whose attributes are restrained by us. Then, we can complete the basic requirement. After killing him, right?" "No, it's done. I've killed the resident." Because the kill contribution is more than 50%, the system determined that Han Dong killed Director Richard. "What?" Cass tilted his handsome face and stared at the weak look on his face. He was so shocked that he leaned closer. Killing a resident was a team operation. It required careful planning and planning. Before Cass was ready, the person had already been killed by Han Dong. Unknowingly, he found a familiar thigh again. Yes, Dry Town's Central Hospital. Director Richard Powell is dead. The basic requirement has been completed. Next, when we recover to our peak condition, we will officially start the investigation of the clown. Okay. Cass didn't know what to say other than nodding. Overall, the difficulty of finding ores wasn't too high. In fact, it wasn't even as stressful as facing Ultimate Humanoid Demon at the start of the game. Just as they finished looking for ores, Han Dong had already solved all the difficult problems. After dinner, I have to be alone for a while. Yes. The two of them arrived at the familiar convenience store. Diana had already prepared several large portions of food. She had stewed a large portion of bone broth for herself and added 3 buckets of milk to replenish her calcium. Diana, who was in front of him, leaned forward on the table. Overall, it looked a little soft. Even its bones were soft. Diana was also stunned for a long time after hearing about Dean Richard. Diana, whose name was called softly, widened her eyes. The corners of her mouth were still full of milk. To what extent can your metamorphosis reach? Beginner, you can only reach 10% at most. If this limit was exceeded, there would be a risk of corruption. At most, it could reach 20%. Because the hybrid demons I used to break the seed are special, Commander Coden told me to use them as little as possible. Yes. As Han Dong spent most of his time in the library, he had a certain understanding of metamorphosis. Generally speaking, a knight who had just broken the seed would not have such a high level of metamorphosis. Diana was personally trained by Commander Coden, so it was expected that she could reach this level. The difficulty of the inner chapter is frighteningly high. Don't look at how I dealt with the residents alone. In fact, there were a lot of external forces helping me. If I took a wrong step, I wouldn't be able to come back. The process of finding the clown might affect the foundation of Dry Town. It might even disturb the mayor. The metamorphosis ability will definitely be used. You have to be mentally prepared. Okay, let's rest for a day. Tomorrow, I'll talk to you about the hybrid demons. Our current progress has far exceeded that of the Dragon City team. Resting for 2 or 3 days is not a problem. Yes, Han Dong wasn't worried that Diana might have other thoughts about this. After giving her a simple rest time and the relevant arrangements, he left. Han Dong still had a very important matter on his mind. After leaving the supermarket, Han Dong stopped a passing agricultural vehicle and went to the church. For the next day, Han Dong needed an absolutely quiet environment without any disturbances to carry out the very important brain upgrade. He had a hunch that this upgrade might be a little different. However, in front of the church, Han Dong bumped into a character that made him sweat. He did not expect that this person would follow him. "Miss Jane, why are you here?" To be honest, although the two had cooperated and had more in-depth communication, but Han Dong was still afraid of Jane. The reason why Han Dong believed that she would help him get rid of all the clones of the hospital director was because he saw the ambition in her, the ambition to monopolize the hospital. In the note he left for Jane, it was simply written, "I have the means to not be affected by the mark of the void. I hope that Miss Jane can find the right time to destroy all the altars in the hospital. Once Director Richard dies, I believe that it will be very beneficial for Miss Jane." At the same time, Han Dong also left a self-drawn yellow seal on the back of the note. Even if the seal was drawn with an ordinary ink brush, as long as the shape was similar, it would cause resonance. When the female corpse felt the divinity in the seal, she also believed that Han Dong was resisting the mark of the void and thus helped him. In front of the church, Han Dong reached out and held Jane's cold hand. The gentle voice went straight to Han Dong's brain. "I followed you to the farm because I have something to tell you. The death of Director Richard is like a huge stone falling into a pond. The super large ripple will cause a huge change in the entire Dry Town. I don't think the change has much to do with me. It was Miles who killed him, not me. It's not as simple as who killed him. The mayor can see through a lot of things. Director Richard's death is more related to you. The mayor will definitely pay attention to you. However, I'm here for something else this time. It's about your body. Let's find a place where no one is around. I have something private to tell you. Come and sit down." Han Dong was currently a newcomer to the town, so he naturally could not refuse the invitation of the prosecutor. He sat on the cart sideways and slid into the completely enclosed and empty church area to talk about the so-called private matters. Chapter 662. The feeling of sitting on the cart was very strange. Generally speaking, there was only one female corpse lying on the cart. Since it was a cart, naturally, someone had to push it. As soon as Han Dong got on the cart, he saw the person pushing the cart. The horrible scene and the terrifying pressure it brought also scared Han Dong and made him sweat profusely. At the same time, it also confirmed the evaluation of the female corpse. The female corpse's level was definitely not low among the 10 devils. When he sat on the cold cart, the first thing he inhaled was a strong smell of corpse into his nose. He tilted his head and looked. Thousands of corpses were following behind the cart. Although only one person in the front row was pushing the cart, all the corpses were connected by a strange corpse aura and worked together. This was also the reason why a cart could run faster than a car. The cart came to a secret compartment deep in the church. It was about 20 square meters wide, with no window structure and no passage connecting to the underground factory. It was an absolutely safe secret room. Just as Han Dong was about to get off the cart, Jane's voice suddenly came. "Don't get off the cart. Sleep with me." Considering the subsequent cooperation in Dry Town, Han Dong did not directly refuse. After all, Miss Jane couldn't move, and the two of them couldn't do anything if they slept together. The cart was only less than 1 meter wide. Miss Jane's figure was excellent, and she was a very slim Western woman. Plus, her joints were completely destroyed, so she basically didn't take up much space. Han Dong was also thin, so the two of them squeezed on the cart was just right. However, as Han Dong lay down, all the corpses that were originally responsible for pushing the cart looked at the two of them. It was quite awkward. Miss Jane, can you temporarily disperse these corpses that came with the cart? It's a bit uncomfortable. Well, they're tied to the cart. That's the only way. Under Jane's control, thousands of corpses all lay down and got into the bottom of the cart. They were stuffed under the cart and did not affect the conversation between the two. Although Han Dong felt a little better, he still felt a little weird. Put your hand in my mouth. Oh, Han Dong, who was used to this, quickly pulled a note out of Jane's mouth. It was the piece of paper Han Dong had left for her. Because of the yellow seal on it, even though it was just an imprint casually copied by Han Dong, the paper had long carried a trace of divinity. You seem to be the same type of person as Dean Richard? I've also been investigating where Dean Richard's divinity came from. It doesn't seem to belong to the small world he originally lived in. And you are an outsider. Can you tell me the source of divinity? Miss Jian, you should know something about this, right? You must have ascended from a small world as well. You must have killed some outsiders like me. But they're just humans with superpowers. They have nothing to do with divinity. In the world I live in, there's a group of existences that can easily wipe out the human race. The so-called divinity is related to them. Dean Richard just had a contact with one of the gods among them. Although they are very powerful in Drytown, in our world, the Dean is just an elite monster. This sentence immediately piqued Jane's interest. Before her ascension, she did have conflicts with some trainee knights and warriors. She also tried to get some information from them, but there was very little useful information. It was far less detailed and interesting than Han Dong's information. So powerful? Can you be more specific? Anyway, I have nothing to do now. I want to hear it. Han Dong also had his own thoughts in his mind. He tried to tell her all the information that could be told. The scene of the two communicating was quite strange. Han Dong also lay motionless on the cart, as if two corpses were communicating at the soul level. With such questions and answers, it was nighttime. Strangely, lying on the corpse cart for half a day, the battle after effects in Han Dong's body dissipated. It's not particularly vivid to just describe it through words. If Miss Jane is interested, you can also consider visiting my world in the future. After a long sleeping in the same bed conversation, Jane's words became unusually gentle, and her favorability rose to friendly. Thank you for sharing these secrets. However, I still have a lot of things to do here. If it's really as you said, that there are many gods wandering around the world, I can only die now. However, I'm still very grateful. You're the first outsider who didn't want to kill me when you saw me. What do you want? I can give you anything. In such a small, enclosed compartment, a man and a corpse were alone in a room. Such a gentle voice transmission inevitably made one's imagination run wild. If Miss Jane doesn't mind, I want 2 pieces of information. First, my main purpose in coming to Drytown this time, other than the problem of the clown, is to get a torso. It's best if it's a body that can accommodate all rivers into the sea, and its endurance must be strong. Second, I want you, Miss Jane. When Han Dong said this, he thought for a while and felt that it might not be appropriate to say it directly. However, because of such a pause, it created ambiguity. Sure, you can do as you see fit. My body can't move. Jane's voice was heard. Wait, why did you suddenly start talking? Han Dong felt that if the conversation went on like this, there would be a big problem. What I said was, I want your personal information, Miss Jane. Due to the death of Dean Richard, Miss Jane's position may be changed slightly. In the future, we may have to work together. There's a need to deepen our mutual understanding. Okay. Jane took the initiative to transmit her personal information through her consciousness. Collected resident information, female corpse, Jane Doyle. With the Fate System's authentication, it was naturally not fake. Background wall and character drawing. The most common sterile dissection room and a female corpse lying flat. Type, which basic information, female, Height 165 centimeters. Weight 40 kilograms. Religion Druidism. Birthplace nameless female corpse, Grantham Town, Virginia. Current residence Lee Dairy Town, law office, or Central Hospital morgue. When he read the information about Jane's abilities and items, Han Dong was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. The lethal ability was basically unavoidable when he thought about how he was lying on the same bed with such a terrifying woman, and how they were even speaking intimately. Han Dong could only smile awkwardly. After reading all the information, at the end of the illustration, it was marked overall resident ranking. Number 4 at the same time, the number 4 was printed on Jane's body, but she deliberately hid it. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.